especially as a representative of Riot Games, meaning they had to give him the boot, which is a pretty embarrassing way to go. Number 4. Phantom Lord puking. When a streamer decides to get smashed on stream and have a drunken day, things can go very wrong, most of the time with very little notice. We all know that's what happens when people drink, with Twitch being even more public than even being out in public. All these videos are up on the internet for good, and there are always going to be people like us running around and trying to dig up the best of the best for you, the viewer. Phantom Lord gave us one of those when he began firing back shots and having one hell of a good time. He starts off at a run, letting his fans know about every shot and cheering himself on. He slowly gets more and more intoxicated as he progresses, and you can really see just how messed up he is. It's really only a matter of time before this kind of stream goes wrong, and Phantom Lord gives us a great show, not letting us down for one moment. The shots go down harder every time he takes another one, and he almost pukes a few times, barely missing losing his dinner all over the place. At one point, he leans forward after getting really excited and licks the screen, reaching the limit of his tolerance almost immediately afterward. He even goes out of his way to call whoever got him the booze to ask what it was while he's off screen, telling them that he just threw up. He's too wasted at this point to really care that he just made a fool out of himself, but we know he would have ended up regretting it later on in no small way. He's in the bathroom for quite a while and is clearly not at the top of his game, going from wild excitement to leaning over his toilet bowl with spectacular speed. It's a good thing he didn't end up puking all over his rig, which would have been a serious bummer, but still would have been absolutely hilarious. What really makes this so good is the screen lick right before he loses his cool, which isn't the worst thing someone can do, but is still pretty gross and sets the scene perfectly. He seems worried until he finally composes himself and sits back down, too embarrassed to say much for a bit. He starts drinking water, blaming his stomach on coconut water energy drink, but we're still gonna go out on a limb and say that he was boozing and just wanted to save face. Number 3. iNexus Ninja pays big. Some people like to screw with streamers, making fraudulent donations that then cause the streamer to refund. These refund fees can really add up to a lot of money and are one of the biggest issues that streamers face today. Most of the time, these trolls will use stolen credit cards to make these payments, meaning that they really do have to be taken seriously, with most cases ending up with just about all of the ill-spent donations being refunded eventually, to the dismay of streamers everywhere. One troll, however, decided to use his own bank account to fund a spree that ended up totaling well over $50,000 total. iNexus Ninja was having a ton of fun, watching streamers rejoice upon seeing a ridiculous amount of money show up mid-stream from a complete stranger to their channel, knowing the entire time that he planned on calling in the refund and costing the streamer fees on top of losing the full donation as well. He dropped the funds in and made sure the payments went through, waiting a month before touching base with PayPal to initiate the chargeback process. They quickly realized what he was up to, and well, it turns out the refunds don't really work that way if you're paying your own money to be a complete jerk, with the end result being that all the money that iNexus Ninja donated was declared valid. This meant that all the money ended up staying firmly put in streamers' accounts, which we have to say is pretty cool on PayPal's behalf. This is perfect poetic justice, and we're sure it's a big win for any streamer who's been screwed by a chargeback troll in the form of refunded donations. We're certainly not going to lose any sleep over this, and are happy to assume that iNexus Ninja is now well aware of the fact that it sucks when you end up having to dish out an extra $50,000 for being an idiot. We love how this turned out, and it's good to see stream trolls getting a dose of their own medicine. Streamers get hit hard with things like swatters and chargebacks, and the streamers receiving the donations were sometimes pretty skeptical about all this random money, getting worried about how they were going to be screwed over eventually. They came out on top, and it's good to see this working out the way it should. Some of these donations ended up being in the tens of thousands for individual streamers, meaning they got quite the leg up. Number 2. Selfie trouble. Taking selfies isn't usually all that embarrassing, but it can definitely be an issue when you're caught taking a bunch of snapshots when you're unaware that you're not the only one watching. It's even more of an issue when you're being watched by a whole ton of people, which is exactly what happened to Sovicia, pulling the entire stunt while she was up and live. She took a bunch of photos, posing hilariously for each one. She even spends a bunch of time admiring her own skills. This isn't really all that bad in the greater scheme of things, but she definitely took a hit to the ego, big time. The spectacle lasts for around 2 minutes until one of her friends calls her up to inform her that she's broadcasting and making a bit of a fool out of herself. Sovicia tries to play it all off, but her laugh definitely has undertones of actual terror with a good dash of hysteria in there. At this point, she immediately cut her stream and probably spent a good few minutes kicking herself for being so stupid. We get that things like this happened, and we do feel bad that Savicia made such a big blunder, but we're still happy to squeeze a few laughs out of her at this point because she really does have it coming. When you stream your life for the world to see, it could come back to bite you in the ass if you're not careful. And now, Savicia has first-hand knowledge of just how true that is. We're sure she bounced back, but we know she was feeling pretty rough afterward. It's a good thing she has good friends who were able to catch that kind of issue and report it almost immediately. She could very easily have left her stream up for much longer and ended up making things much worse for herself if it had progressed far enough. We wouldn't wish that on her, or anyone really, and we do have to say that the more apparent wardrobe malfunctions and other problems like that are much more detrimental to accidental victims than a candid With so many impressive individuals and harrowing accidents happening all over the world, the advent of the camera phone gives us impressive access to these events. These 5 WTF moments caught on camera and spotted in real life are terrifying examples of what can go wrong in any situation. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Tadeusz Rona. Some pilots find it hard to land a large plane without touching down too hard on a good day. Not all pilots are built the same, as evidenced by Tadeusz Rona's incredible aerial feat. He was the pilot in charge of a massive Boeing 767 that had departed from Newark Airport hours earlier. On board were himself, his co-pilot, the crew, and over 200 passengers, all with their life in Tadeusz's capable hands. An experienced pilot, he had successfully accomplished many flights and was comfortable making his way around the controls of such a large plane. The plane was forced to make an emergency landing at the end of its trip to Warsaw when the pilot realized that the landing gear wasn't functioning properly. Passengers were informed of the situation as it developed, allowing them to get in touch with their loved ones should the worst happen. Tadeusz himself turned to his co-pilot and wished him good luck, saying that he had enjoyed their time together. That's not a great sign, but it is a touching sentiment. As the plane descended and people on board made what they knew could be their final calls, the plane began to head toward the runway. Video footage shows it coming in, looking fairly controlled but still in danger. With no landing gear, any little bump or mistake could send the entire weight of that massive metal flying out of control along the ground. Inside the plane, some passengers took their own video footage using their phones, showing a plane full of people in emergency positions. One passenger mentioned that the landing was actually exceptionally smooth, even compared to other flights with working landing gears. That's when the pilot and crew ushered passengers off while fighting a fire that broken out, putting themselves in danger in order to save the others. While not common, plane crashes like this generally end in disaster, making Rona a hero for his quick thinking and calm attitude while facing an impossible situation. Most other pilots wouldn't have been able to pull something like that off, but we're glad that Tadeusz was a skilled and expert pilot, managing to save an entire plane full of terrified people. He used the engines to stabilize the plane as it skidded along the runway, which is seriously impressive, earning him the title of a Polish national hero. He says he's just a regular guy, but we know now that he's one hell of a pilot and definitely worthy of the title hero. Number 4. Gorge Swing Accident. A death-defying moment was caught on camera from multiple angles when a thrill-seeker at a gorge swing in Australia's Blue Mountains almost lost his life. After a successful start to the day, with many incredible jumps taken by participants, our unfortunate victim stepped up to the plate. He jumped off the edge of the enormous cliff face and disappeared over the edge. A camera on the rope above him showed what happened next, and it's pretty rough footage to watch. As he plummets, the man, completely harnessed in, smashes his legs into an outcropping of rock with incredible force. It's not too far below the jump site, but far enough down that it's one hell of a hit. He buckles almost in half on impact, and you can tell right away that he's in some serious pain. The swing then continues to swing back and forth repeatedly like a pendulum. Miraculously, he wasn't killed when he plowed straight into the rocks, but he shattered his legs, leaving them completely useless. As he howls in pain, everyone up top realizes the kind of trouble he's in. A rescue party was quickly mounted while the rest of the group waits for him to stop swinging, with one of his friends suiting up and heading slowly over the edge of the sheer cliff. He lowers himself down and finally makes it to his buddy, who, with help, is able to get back to the waiting evac chopper. It's a long process since he's on one very long rope dangling over what is essentially an abyss. Even with their safety gear, it's clear that anything can go wrong, with extreme sports turning into extreme survival situations without notice. After climbing the rope, the victim crawls over and lays down on his side, allowing waiting paramedics to take a look. Since they were in such a remote location with no clear landing space, he's strapped to a gurney that's then hoisted to the chopper above, leaving the rest of the group to pack up in reflection. The man who fell broke both of his feet, as well as his ankles, legs, and coccyx. We presume that he will, after rehabilitation, possibly head back out and try the jump again, but it would take a lot of courage to head back after such a terrifying ordeal. Number 3. Base jump slip-up. We didn't know what to make of this video at first and thought that this guy was definitely a goner. The footage starts with him walking along the edge of an insanely tall tower, staring death in the face. All of a sudden, he makes a stupid mistake. With his foot missing the side of the building, he lands on his knees trying to catch himself, but he slips off the side, plummeting toward the ground. People close to him then shuffle closer and take a look over the edge, watching him as he falls. At first, it looks like this could very easily be footage of a terrible and tragic accident, but it's a little more than that. As the man walks along the ledge, we saw what we thought might be backpack straps around his shoulders. Furthermore, as he fell, it looked like he had something large on his back. Slowing the video down, we see that he's definitely got a large pack on, and it looks a lot like a parachute rig. We suspect that the fall itself was staged in order to capture the footage that we have now. Even if it wasn't, this was obviously a staged event, with everyone taking the necessary precautions. Not being able to see the cameraman, we can't speak for that, but we assume he's properly kitted out. At least we hope so. Watching him fall with his camera would be brutal, and the world doesn't need to see that. We also saw the event badges hanging around the neck of the guy who leans over the edge, as well as the fact that the security guard walking by right before the incident doesn't seem the least bit surprised or worried. If this was staged, this event is still wildly dangerous, and we can't believe that someone would go out of their way to fall off a building, then tumble to the ground before pulling their chute at what looks like the last second. We can't tell for sure, but it looks like he waits until he's not even a speck in the distance before finally opening up his parachute, because we couldn't make it out at all. That being said, Red Bull did host that jump from outer space a few years back, where Felix tumbled like a ragdoll for a worrying while. Some people are just wired to do crazy stuff like this, taking their lives in their own hands in order to cheat death while entertaining us in the meantime. Number 2. Cliff Jump Belly Flop. Not quite at the same level as our other moments, this video shows some very real pain for this poor guy. After impact, the look on the face of the guy at the top of the cliff is priceless. He's stunned and shocked, not sure how things are going to work out. Everything ends up fine, but that belly flop was one of the better ones we've seen. Water doesn't compress as you hit it, making a fall like that hit like a ton of bricks, or a concrete sidewall. The jumper swims back up, which is always a happy sign, but his slowed movements speak volumes. He's in a lot of pain and trying to swim it off. This guy's mistake was taking a half-hearted run with a bunny hop at the end before he made his launch. We're also sure, based on his terrible form, that he's not used to inverting himself like that, getting part of the way there but not really being able to fully commit. The momentum takes him too far anyway, and the moment he realizes he's screwed is clear. He waves his arms as he comes upright, hoping to stop, but then it turns into a wild flail as he keeps going, with his legs following suit soon after. This display of bravado is human instinct, but never gets any less funny. The jumper's saving grace here is that he manages to roll onto his side a little bit, making the impact a little less solid than it could have been. It still didn't do too much to help him, and that splash is epic. The surface area needed to pull that off even hurts us when we think about it. The fact that he was able to swim out on his own steam is just as well, because while everyone looks worried, it becomes apparent a few seconds in that nobody's about to jump in immediately to help just in case. With a ton of laughter before he actually hits, you can tell this isn't a group ready to administer proper medical aid either. Number 1. Bike accident. This is why people need dash cams. Well, that and to use as evidence to prove your case in the event that someone tries to lie about a traffic incident. It also comes in handy for keeping track of license plates. The biker in this next video should have known that passing on the inside is a seriously stupid thing to do, but he doesn't seem to have any worries as he jets down the highway. A dash cam in the back of the car watches him approach at breakneck speed, coming in from the furthest lane over, passing and cutting people off without any regard for their safety or his own. It's also clear that he doesn't give a damn about his pillion passenger hanging for dear life on the back of the bike. It's a proven fact that the rider of the bike doesn't usually get wrecked nearly as badly as the passenger, who has a much higher chance of instant death in these cases. The back cam registers a sharp noise, showing the car wiggle a bit. The front cam shows a different story entirely. It turns out the car with the cameras was stopping because someone in front of them had broken down. The trunk is open and they're obviously stopped. The biker, going too fast to register this, kept going at full speed, passed on the inside of the car, then smashed directly into the open trunk. With no time to slow down before impact, the bike stops dead, but the riders continue moving forward, with the rider doing somersaults and the passenger smashing right into the open trunk, both out cold and broken everywhere. The bike itself is totaled, and you can see that both riders have suffered massive damage, with their limbs flailing miserably. The crumpled passenger is hard to watch, as is the ragdoll spin of the rider in midair. They did survive their death-defying stunt, albeit with multiple fractures all over their body. They were rushed to the ICU and are still recovering in the hospital as of August 2017. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Parks feature more than their fair share of creepy events. The following 5 creepy things caught on camera in parks certainly fit the bill. These sightings range from the paranormal to the downright bizarre and everything in between. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Masked Weirdo. People are freaking out about clowns these days for no real reason. We're sure the original sightings were a little spooky, but it's degraded into a bunch of wannabes trying to feel important. We say it's time to stop getting creeped out by clown pretenders, after this next one anyway, who has less of a desperate air about him and seems more like someone who would beat you down before taking your wallet, your phone, and your keys just for the sake of it. This video was posted on YouTube by a couple of guys who ran into a pretty awkward clown. While they might be brave, that mask has "hell no" written all over it. The best we could come up with was that this guy's high or drunk, or both. We think the fact that he isn't getting all done up to freak people out is even more terrifying than some guy in a clown suit. It's obvious this guy isn't really following any trend here, which makes him straight up creepy as hell. You gotta be some kind of loose cannon to toss a mask on and walk around in public at nighttime. Our rule when encountering strange men in dark pants is to quickly and quietly get out of there, especially if they have that crackhead vibe about him. This dude ticks all the boxes, so Buddy with the camera would be on his own before he ever got a clear shot. Good thing for him, his friend is a little more loyal because, well, if he was on his own, he might not have captured this footage before running in the other direction. Then again, even they can't take it after a certain point. After the guy notices our 2 videographers huddled together for safety, he begins staggering towards them. That's when they decide they've had enough, with one of them saying they should bolt if he gets any closer. He then shuffles a little closer, and the guys realize he's definitely got a bead on him. The video then cuts off and leaves us assuming that the guys behind the camera hightailed it to somewhere without creepy clowns wearing hoodies, basketball shorts, and flip-flops. That being said, if he's wearing flip-flops, he's probably not all that much of a threat when all is said and done. Number 4. Stick creatures. The aliens have landed. At least that definitely seems to be the case in this next video. A security camera in Yosemite National Park picked up this creepy footage in 2011. which features some otherworldly-looking creatures. They slowly creep in out of the woods and slink across the width of the frame over the course of a minute or so. Looking like a pair of pants with heads attached at the waist, these unidentified aliens would certainly send shivers up the spines of anyone who actually came across them one night. Yosemite is the site of many supposed ET and UFO sightings over the years, with many citing its relatively quiet environment. They seem to be forgetting a fairly recent study that proved that noise levels have spiked in recent years due to human settlement in the surrounding area. These noise levels are having some serious impacts on both plant and animal life in the park, and could eventually pose a very serious problem if left unchecked. Yosemite is also a notoriously crowded and busy park, with overwhelming amounts of campers and day trippers taking over its expanse pretty much every day of the year. With that amount of people showing up to potentially spot them, we're pretty sure aliens don't have any reason to choose Yosemite over, say, Dallas. Eastern Europe would undoubtedly be a much more apt location for ETs if they hope to remain hidden. Even so, this footage and many other videos like it beg to differ, stating empathetically that Yosemite, for one reason or another, is absolutely a hot spot for aliens. We think that people are trying too hard to find their 15 minutes of fame. Call us crazy, but we don't think it's all that hard to put on a strange costume and take a stroll past a security camera, which is probably what happened here. Still, the footage is exceptionally creepy, and we wouldn't take the time to figure out if these figures were just kids playing a prank before we hightailed it right out of there at top speed. Number 3. Elusive Peeping Tom. This next location is a little more appropriate when it comes to potential alien sightings. The footage was shot at Pausberg National Monument in Holland. It seems that a couple of guys were hiking to the Rangers Fire Tower to take in the view of the surrounding area, which is supposed to be pretty magnificent. Along the way, they ran into another pair of hikers. Unfortunately, the site was closed due to vandalism, which put their plans for the day off a little bit. This is when they witnessed something pretty damn creepy that scared the entire group and shook them all up quite a bit. They managed to capture the entire incident and thankfully uploaded it for the world to see. After walking away from the tower, they suddenly hear loud banging coming from the surrounding woods. At first, they have no idea what the source is, but suddenly they see a strange figure hiding behind a tree, staring at them every few seconds before disappearing behind the tree. When they notice the figure, the banging noises seem to stop until one incredibly loud bang that sounds a little like a small explosion sends the team running for safety. They get a pretty good shot of the creature close up, which looks like a person wearing a large black hood. Only the head, shoulders, and neck of the figure are seen. The group did get out safely, with one of them eventually handing the footage over to a friend to post. The creepy figure in the video does look a little like a person, but that sickly gray, half-obscured face suggests otherwise. This could be a video put together by a few bored friends in order to troll the internet a little, but we think it shows more promise than most. The eerie noises, ghostly figure, and loud explosion, coupled with the guys seeming genuinely scared, all make us question what that particular group of hikers encountered that day. These types of videos usually feature poor acting skills. It's genuinely hard to make a video look unexpected if it's actually been pre-planned. If that's the case here, these guys do deserve some kudos for their talent and on picking up that terrifyingly creepy costume. If, however, this was something unexplainable, these guys might have caught some crystal clear footage of a real-life alien. We'll leave the ultimate decision up to you. We figured this footage was too good to pass up and is absolutely creepy enough to make today's countdown. Number 2. White Figure. Our next creepy park sighting comes from Singapore. The footage was captured by a Malaysian tourist who also happened to be active in an online paranormal enthusiasts website. When they returned home, they uploaded the footage for us to track down and present to you as our number 2 spot on the countdown. A group of friends was fishing in a park in some pretty miserable nighttime conditions when they spotted something off. One of them had their phone out ready to capture the footage of their strange encounter. The mysterious white figure drops down from a tree to take in its surroundings, making itself pretty clearly visible before retreating back into its hiding spot. The rain falling down all around the area simply adds to the level of creepiness, coming down in a steady blanket and drowning out ambient noise. This would have been a pretty dull walk through Sembawang Park if it hadn't been for the odd creature that makes its creepy appearance. Worth noting here, the area was a bloody mass execution in the day. Since then, countless people to see strange sights and ghostly apparitions. The park is somewhat famous for these sightings, which is probably why our self-proclaimed paranormal investigator was hanging out there in the first place. We bet that he probably knew exactly what he was doing and was ready for any eventuality, especially one of a ghostly. The world has some incredible creatures that pose very unique challenges for hunters. Whatever your views on hunting, it goes without saying that it's a dangerous sport. A lot can go wrong, especially when dealing with unpredictable animals, and these 5 shocking moments caught on camera while hunting. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Chimp with AK. It seems to be legitimate and is downright terrifying, or absolutely hilarious depending on your point of view. This video has been watched countless times and is still a classic. It features a group of West African soldiers hanging out and having some fun while they sit in a circle. They're all engaging with a chimp who stumbled into their midst, checking in on what all the fuss is about. It seems that one of the guys has the bright idea to give a rifle to the chimp and see how it handles the weapon. He tells his friend, who quickly decides that he's onto something. He happily hands his weapon over while everyone laughs and continues to have one hell of a good time. The chimp takes the weapon, an AK, complete with a loaded magazine, and brandishes it the same way the soldiers do. They get a real kick out of this, with one of the guys pretending to unload his own weapon towards the chimp, shifting the muzzle back and forth in a spraying motion. After the joke wears off, the chimp decides to shoulder the rifle and begin mimicking the soldiers, moving the muzzle of its own weapon from side to side. The guys then begin to get a little uneasy, with all of them now on their feet and getting ready to run for cover. It seems they realized a little too late that the rifle was loaded with its safety off when it was handed over. Knowing that it has these guys beat, then proceeds to pull the trigger and release a volley that continues as the entire group of soldiers run for their lives. The guy with the camera drops behind a barrel and trains it back on the chimp, revealing the victor standing on its own with the rifle still clutched in its hands. It circles around, taking in its surroundings and all the mayhem it caused, before raising the rifle above its head in a hilarious display of bravado. Seems we're not so different from our chimp relatives after all, with this group of soldiers now knowing exactly why you shouldn't give one a loaded, fully automatic rifle. It's a miracle that nobody was hurt, although we're sure this isn't the only time this has happened. The fact that the footage does seem to be from 20th Century Fox's research library does make us think that it could possibly be staged, but a thorough review of the video hasn't revealed anything to make us overly suspicious, except for the fact that the cameraman is stupidly brave. If this is a hoax, it's a pretty good one, and we have to say that it really made our day. The soldiers might beg to disagree, but we can assume that if this incident was real, they were able to laugh about it later once the smoke had settled. Number 4. Bow hunter. This big game hunter probably should have taken more than a bow with him when he decided to take on a lioness in Africa. Then again, he's a pretty good shot and probably knew what he was doing. His buddy hanging out with a rifle to take the angry predator down is a solid call when it comes to having a proper defense, but we think that trying to take down a lion with a bow only to have it charge you with no signs of any real injury isn't much of a win in the greater scheme of things. We get that bow hunters like to take on big game, but when they put themselves in harm's way like that, we'd expect them to be good enough to not need to use those guns. It just seems like cheating. We say that if you can't take the lion out with an arrow, then the lion gets to take you out instead. It would definitely add an extra element to the sport, and also make it a lot more sportsmanlike in the process. At the end of the day, if you need a rifle, just use a rifle. If you really want to use both, by all means, use both, but we say you've got to carry and use both weapons yourself, instead of copping out and bringing Daryl along with you as a spotter. These guys really had all the advantages here, which makes their trophy less impressive, with their outing being, in our minds, a glorified day of mudding and tailgating. Maybe we're being a little harsh here. It does look like the hunters were skilled, and we do have to applaud Buddy for landing that arrow, but nobody should really expect to down a lion with a bow without getting more than a few stitches in the process. That being said, we'd be frozen in fear if we were in the same situation, with an angry predator sprinting in our direction. These guys stayed cool, calm, and collected throughout, which earns them spot number 4 on today's countdown. Number 3. Buffalo won't stay down. When you go hunting buffalo, it takes a lot to bring them down and keep them down for good. These hunters learned just how fearsome a wounded animal can be when they approached a buffalo they thought was too wounded to fight back. They approach cautiously, not wanting to get too close, with the group probably being aware of the danger they're in ahead of time. That doesn't make what happened next any less surprising or terrifying, however, as the buffalo still has enough energy in it to make their day a complete nightmare. The animal is lying there, wounded and confused, not knowing what hit it. As it looks around, it turns towards the group of hunters who are slowly creeping closer, realizing that they're coming to take it out. The buffalo decides it isn't ready to go down without a fight, turning with surprising speed despite its incredible size and standing with a grunt to make a last-ditch effort to save its own life, charging with reckless abandon. The hunter takes a shot, which doesn't faze the beast at all, and then another. After a couple of hits like that, you'd expect the buffalo would drop, but it just keeps charging, going down only a foot or two away from the lead hunter. If the third shot hadn't fully taken the buffalo down, one at long range and two up close, he almost certainly would have been impaled, trampled, or both, making that guy amazingly lucky to still be able to walk at that point. His stock still stance, with his legs spread, wound up tight and ready for anything, says it all once the buffalo finally stops moving and falls to the ground, with nobody saying anything at all for a few seconds as they recover from their shock. Eventually, one of the group begins to laugh, sending the rest of them into a nervous giggle. We bet their hearts were racing at that point, and the guy with the gun barely reacts to his friends as he stares at that buffalo intently, making sure it's actually down for the count. Turns out that the beast was actually hit 5 times before the group approached, meaning it had a ton of fight left in it despite being in no shape to do much other than lie there. The first shot after the charge supposedly hit it on the nose, glancing off its face, with the final shot having to land between its eyes to finally drop the massive creature. This just goes to show that big game hunting can go wrong very quickly if you're not prepared for the worst. Number 2, lion charge. The following footage was taken by a group of lion hunters who are stalking a lion they've already hit once. The animal isn't ready to give up just yet, with one shot not being enough to take it down. Knowing that it doesn't have many options left and that the hunters are catching up, the lion decides to bait them, keeping them on the chase until it can lure them into an area with a little more cover. It then stops, ready to make a final stand, roaring a warning to the hunters, signaling that it's had enough of being the prey. The group knows that this is a sign that the animal's ready to lash out, and they know that they're actually being hunted as well at this point. They get down on a knee and raise their rifles collectively, watching and waiting for any sign of the wounded but still wildly dangerous lion. The lion bides its time for a few seconds before tearing out of the bush, running headlong at one of the group members. It charges through a volley of rifle shots, barely missing a beat as the bullets seem to simply bounce off of it. It's finally taken down mid-leap, mere milliseconds before tearing into one of the hunters. It's a terrifying moment as he was almost a goner. If that last bullet hadn't landed perfectly, he would have ended up being torn to bits. As it was, the lion basically landed on top of him as it succumbed to its wounds, with the guy only barely getting out of the way as the beast crashed down and ceased to move. The killing shot was actually landed by the guy being charged, and it turns out he hadn't even shouldered his weapon, instead firing from the hip and hoping for the best. That's one hell of a safari story, with that incident almost being lights out for both the lion and the hunter. Number 1, bear trouble. We're wrapping up today's countdown with another bow hunter taking on some serious game. This time it's a bear instead of a lion, which we think is even more ridiculous. A lion is tough and has some serious speed and power, but a bear's hide is incredibly thick and they can crush a skull with one lazy swipe, making this an inadvisable activity. The guy with the bow ends up hitting the bear a few times before the pair accidentally give their position away, alerting the bear to their presence. It finally decides it's had enough and charges the pair, circling around to get a good run at the hunters. They yell at the bear to try to scare it away, but at this point it knows they're after it and realizes that it has a life or death choice to make. A rifle shot finally downs the beast, with it landing only feet away from the group of hunters. This was a very sticky situation and would have been game over if not for that perfect shot. We're sure that the two had this situation under control, but it's worth noting that even one misstep or mistake could very easily have been the end of any of these hunters, with big game hunting carrying some very real dangers for those involved. That bear is enormous, with its claws basically being the size of that guy's head. We have to give these guys kudos for having the balls to hit a bear with a bow repeatedly from such close range and living to tell the story. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. The world has seen people go missing countless times in the past. While tragic, it's just one of those things that you hope doesn't happen to you. That was what the people in these 5 unexplained disappearances caught on camera and spotted in real life wanted. Unfortunately, they ended up being written into the history books. We're sure that these creepy mysteries are bound to pique your curiosity. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Harold Holt. Harold Holt was an Australian Prime Minister who went missing during that time. It's not often that a world leader simply vanishes without a trace. It's also something that you might assume would get a little more attention. You have to realize, however, that in Australia, everything moving is liable to kill you, with most leaving you in excruciating pain first. The incident was labeled a potential drowning by police, and that was the end of that. No federal government inquiry or any other official inquiry into the matter was launched, potentially because of all the bickering between politicians of all parties in the aftermath of his disappearance. The only really troubling part about his disappearance was that it left a void to fill with nobody able to properly fill it. That's how his death was treated officially anyway. Even one of the buildings dedicated to him, under construction at the time of his disappearance, seems to mock him after death, as it's none other than the Harold Holt Memorial Swimming Center. Holt's death could have been due to any number of factors, animal life being one of them. Sharks, deadly jellyfish, and the blue ring octopus inhabit those waters, all of which could easily take a person out without much effort. If stung by one of the latter two, or any number of other deadly sea creatures found on Australia's coasts, it would be lights out quick. Then you have the strong current, unpredictable conditions, and possible undertow, which are very common features of Australia's beaches. Even a strong swimmer can be caught unawares by all manners of danger around Fort Phillip Bay, the area where he took his final dip. The actual story doesn't have much to it. Holt swam out in rough seas and never came back. That's it. No body was ever found, although there was no reason to suspect foul play. It's interesting that in the 60s, while the rest of the world was completely on edge, the Australian Prime Minister was able to simply head out for a swim, never to return. In this day and age, it would be unthinkable, but it speaks to a different time. Many think that Holt may have been done in by a shoulder injury that hadn't fully healed at the time of his disappearance. Number 4. Bennington Triangle Mystery. The Bennington Triangle is an undefined area centered around Bennington, Vermont, and the nearby Glastonbury Mountains that encompasses a fairly expansive area. The term was first introduced by author Joseph A. Citro in 1992 while chatting with a radio broadcaster about the disappearances in question. From 1920 to 1950, this place was a hotbed of mysterious disappearances. All of them were seemingly unrelated and included people who never knew each other or had anything in common prior to the events. None were ever solved, and the area is now a favorite of ghost hunters, paranormal enthusiasts, and history buffs. Some accounts claim that strange disappearances were happening even before those confirmed, but we're unable to speak about those. If they've been happening for over 100 years, that makes this area in Vermont a disturbing place to live. There are in total over a dozen reports of missing persons since the 20s, with all of them leaving everything they owned behind. Adding more depth to the story, when a search was launched in 1950 for a missing 8-year-old who disappeared after being left alone in a vehicle momentarily, the dogs were brought in and followed his scent until it too vanished. The place the dogs brought them was the very place that Paula Weldon disappeared while hiking 10 years prior in 1940. The last person to disappear in the Bennington Triangle was Frida Langer, who went missing in 1950. They found her remains had decomposed too much before being found to identify a cause of death. No link to any of the other Bennington mysteries has ever been found, making some doubt whether it's connected or just a coincidence. Locals are sure that something's going on, but don't seem to get too worked up about it. The Bennington Triangle will forever remain a mystery, with many claiming that it's a hoax. Others claim that disappearances are happening to this day, but it's difficult to point any modern disappearances to those from the mid-1900s. Still, more people say that it's neither, with the disappearances happening to be coincidental in nature and not really worth looking into as a whole. Number 3. Frederick Valentic. With so much empty space and, as we mentioned earlier, so many things that can kill you, Australia, as it turns out, is not only dangerous, but also super mysterious. Yet another Australian mystery disappearance is that of Frederick Valentik, who was training to become a commercial pilot. He was on a routine run in a Cessna 182L light aircraft heading over Bass Strait, headed towards a small island between the mainland and Tasmania. A little way into his flight, he radioed Melbourne's control tower to say that something was following his aircraft. Most importantly, that something was definitely weird. He reported that the unidentified craft was flying about a half-kilometer above his aircraft. He then reported back to say that his engine was acting up and that things weren't going so well. A third report, the last he made before the radio went silent, was, "It's not an aircraft." What could possibly have been up there with Frederick, and why did his radio suddenly cut after his final foreboding report? Some reporters claimed that officials from the Department of Transport had stated their belief that Valentik had become disoriented somehow and had been flying upside down without realizing it. He had been reprimanded before, once for even flying into a controlled area over Sydney. He claimed the object had been moving exceptionally quickly. It then began hovering around him, and he said that it had a shiny surface that looked like metal. The craft also had a single green light. Right after his final statement, between the end of his sentence and the radio being cut, a sound that was described as being like metal scraped together was heard. This story is full of intrigue, with the world never being able to know what Frederick really saw up there. It could be a government or military cover-up, with his plane being taken out after he saw too much. Many also claim that it must have been aliens, but we think it'd be a real twist if he really was flying upside down, crashing into the Earth to investigate it. That being said, the Earth doesn't look metallic or shiny for the most part, but conditions were rough and visibility was low that day. Better pilots than Frederick, seasoned veterans even, have succumbed to accidents very much like this one, with the Bermuda Triangle theory being perpetuated after the lead in a squadron of bombers, out on a training run, got disoriented and ran out of fuel while trying to get his bearings back. We're not saying that's definitely what happened, but it's a promising lead. Number 2. MV Joyita crew. Seen better days and was in very serious disrepair, but she was incredibly buoyant, able to stay upright and afloat in the most extreme weather. The Joyita was on a tight schedule. She pulled away from the dock, with one engine inoperable and the radio able to transmit around 2 nautical miles after being held up for repairs. Her captain decided it was best to head out after partial repairs had been done, trusting his boat to get him to his destination in one piece. The Joyita also carried 16 crew members and 9 passengers, a World War II surgeon and accomplished doctor among them. None of those aboard made it to their final destination, vanishing into thin air away. The weeks later, listing heavily for taking on water, but it wasn't enough to warrant any real worry of sinking. The crew were all missing, as well as the cargo, which didn't consist of any stealing. The radio was found tuned to the international distress frequency, but no other signs of distress were found. The water taken on by the boat was due to a fault that was slowly leaking water into the bilge tanks. The leak itself would have been hard to fix, but not impossible, and even if the crew decided to evacuate the ship due to this relatively minor leak, there was no reason to take the cargo as well. People have claimed pirates, but authorities say there was no hard evidence to suggest an abduction taking place. There was a canopy rigged on the deck house as a makeshift awning, which suggests the occupants may have been stranded for a time. They also found the doctor's bag, which is quite a few blood-soaked bandages. Come to think of it, the weapons kept in the boat were missing too. Most people point to the crew becoming panicked and abandoning ship, but it really doesn't make sense. There's still no evidence suggesting what happened to the 26 people on board that ship, and no clues as to why it was abandoned. A search was conducted, but turned up nothing at all. Some sleuths are still looking into their strange cold case, hoping to solve the mystery once and for all, but most have simply forgotten about it, counting it as one more reason why you don't head out on a dated ship with faulty piping, poor radio wiring, and only one engine. Also, if we were pirates, we'd take the boat too. Number 1. Flight MH370. Hailed as one of the biggest aviation mysteries of all time, although we can think of a few others that might give Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 a run for its money. Not that there's any competition here. We know that the aircraft, filled with passengers, crashed into the Indian Ocean in 2014. What we don't know is why. The investigation into the crash found that the landing gear was retracted at the time of impact, suggesting that the plane went down while still in operation. It also shows that no emergency landing attempt was made. There was no sign of any emergency regulations being followed after the crash either, telling us that there probably weren't many survivors left in the wreckage. There were 227 people aboard, all presumed dead at this point. After the plane took off, the captain radioed the tower and wished them good night, saying all was well. Nothing was heard from the plane after that, and nothing was found until almost 5 months after the fact, when aircraft debris washed up on a beach on Reunion, which is an island in the Indian Ocean. The very next day, a suitcase washed up that was possibly one of those being carried on Flight 370. That gives a little more insight, but no real proof either way, as good as the odds are. We think this does point to the aircraft going down in the Indian Ocean, but it's still not much and is still based on conjecture, no matter how good. So many theories surround this case that they're not worth getting into here, but we encourage you to take a look at Flight 370 as well as that of Helios Airways Flight 522, which is another great, albeit tragic, commercial airline mystery. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. It's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Twitch is filled with expert gamers showing their fans what they do best. With so many people using hacks to try to gain an advantage over their opponents, it was a breeze to find these 5 embarrassing moments caught on Twitch TV, showcasing some of our favorite examples of players getting caught live on stream. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Miss Q Gemini, CSGO hacker caught red-handed. Summit1G is a popular streamer who loves to show his reactions to clips of his less impressive counterparts getting caught hacking. Miss Q Gemini and her now infamous CSGO stream was one such victim who probably should have remained a little more above board during her matches. She wasn't all that popular before Summit got a hold of her, and we can expect that her newly found notoriety won't earn her any new followers anytime soon. The hack is apparent when she gets sent some bits, which is a way of showing support on the platform that then somehow end up revealing her hacks. Summit guesses that she got distracted and accidentally hit a key that revealed the hacking program's UI to every single person watching her stream at the time. She doesn't realize that this has happened and keeps playing, clearly showing the entire dumpling empire, the term she uses to describe her fans, that she's been cheating. Her stream chat then blows up with people going nuts about her accidental reveal. She then exits her game, dropping back into the main menu before attempting to pin her mistake on a friend of hers. Miss Q immediately throws her friend Clara under the bus, insisting that she's never seen anything like that before. After a little bit of huffing and puffing, coupled with asking her followers if they can identify the unknown program for her, she then supposedly texts the real culprit while railing against her and preaching about the evils of letting someone else use your PC. We're sure that Clara's a real person, but we're pretty positive that she had nothing to do with the incident in question. Given the amount of people who saw Miss Q's mishap, it's probably a given that she'll be getting a VAC ban, meaning her account basically ends up locked and useless. Summit then goes on to check her score and comments that she only received a minor score boost, due to the fact that she only used wall hacks instead of something like an aimbot, which is hilarious considering the issue definitely led to a Twitch ban. That's not much gain considering the outcome. Her channel ended up shut down, which meant no more Twitch streaming for Miss Q for quite a while. Summit actually finished his call out by saying that it'd be a real kick in the pants if Clara actually was behind the hacking program, and we couldn't agree more. We're pretty sure, however, given the terrible show Miss Q put on, that she's most definitely personally guilty of hacking. If she wasn't, then she would have reacted to being able to see opponents highlighted through walls long before her followers pointed it out. Number 4. I Love Stoda 2 Mayguard Battlefield 4 cheater called out live. So, stream sniping is as big a deal as hacking to many gamers, but this next gamer was called out for both in an epic fashion by well-known streamer Stoda. He doesn't seem to care much about the fact that stream sniping is definitely going on because, well, that's just gotta be expected when you put your multiplayer screen up for everyone to see. It's also pretty apparent that sniping's going on because the handle I Love Stoda 2 just gives it away. Some games, like the relatively new PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, will actively ban gamers for this as they see it as a form of cheating. Stoda takes this all in stride, but a fellow gamer tips him off to the fact that his opponent isn't just following his stream to get an advantage, but is also hacking at the very same time. After deciding to drop out and play another game, Stoda decides to check on his opponent's stats page, which clearly shows a ridiculous headshot percentage of 91%. While this is a solid indicator of underhandedness, it's by no means a foolproof way to identify potential hackers, as it's possible to pull something like that off legitimately, although not that probable. A commenter on Stoda's stream by the name of Mayguard then comes to called out gamers' aid by stating that they were spectating them the entire time in-game and can confirm that they weren't hacking at all. Stoda realizes right away that something's off and gives the profile in question another look. Turns out I Love Stoda 2 and Mayguard are one and the same, with the previous alias backing up the claim. It's one thing to hack during a stream sniping session, which is pretty despicable in our minds, and another thing entirely to attempt to cover up that fact by trying to pretend you're another gamer out to disprove the initial claims. That just takes being a terrible person to the next level. Stoda plays it off brilliantly and proceeds to call the sneaky hacker out on his live stream, proving to everyone in the chat that he's not afraid to stir up some trouble. After this brief exchange, Stoda asks Mayguard to explain themselves, but his target had already logged out at that point, probably to nurse their wounds and shake off that enormous embarrassment. Kudos goes out to Stoda, who decided to post the exchange on his YouTube channel to kick up the shaming level to epic. Number 3. H1Z1 player toggles TM cheats. Our next detective, Haunted, enlightened us a little ways back to a fellow H1Z1 player's hacking mistakes. Many streamers who get caught end up only making just one tiny little mistake, but that's all it takes for a complete ban and thorough shaming. He wasn't able to think quickly enough to try to pull a trick like Miscue Gemini did and claim that it was all Clara's fault, which just makes it even more comical. The dumb guy just sits there, jaw slightly askew, looking rather dull the entire time. Not much of a personality there, huh? The guy posting the video, Haunted, is pretty excited, and we can't blame him. We also dig that his mom popped in with lunch for him halfway through the video, with the kid never missing a beat except to thank her. What a sweet kid. If only we could hook up service like that while gaming. Getting back to Big Red, the streamer who got caught with his pants down and hacking program up, we'd assume when you get caught hacking to this extent, especially before you're even in game, that you just shut down the stream and declare technical issues before trying to troubleshoot while hoping for the best. Thankfully for us, this guy isn't all that quick on the uptake and keeps his stream open while staring blankly at his screen for another little while, apparently oblivious to the serious blunder he's just made. After pulling up the server list, the streamer accidentally toggles over to his TM Cheats program in full view of everyone and begins messing around with it before hiding it from view again. It was up long enough to show everyone exactly what was going on, which would have been hilarious to see firsthand. Could be that his stream's on a delay because his buddy alerts him a few seconds later with a whoa 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 before telling him to shut down stream, shut down stream. The cheater then catches on far too late and shuts everything down, his stream going dark. Just a little bit later, a system message pops up on Haunted's screen to let everyone know that Big Red, along with all his other aliases, has been banned for cheating. The system message then continues with a hearty "thanks for streaming it." That's the kind of humor we like to see in these things. Being called out is funny enough, but having the system message actively taunt you sarcastically is the icing on the cake. Number 2. War Z channel raid leads to slip up. Another Summit favorite, this clip shows exactly what happens when you lose your cool while hacking. The video shows only Dax, who's an awkward little guy to be sure, busy streaming his The War Z gameplay as well as giving away blazers, whatever those are. We figure he either misspelled blazer, which is an odd giveaway for a gaming channel, or is potentially giving away rifles or shotguns made by a Germany firearms manufacturer. Either way, those are both awkward items items and were not sure what to make of it. Much like Big Red, this kid isn't very quick to catch his mistakes, and his facial expressions are just wonderful throughout. This kid's got a few minutes of running around before realizing that another streamer has raided his channel, tearing up his chat and making a scene. This isn't unexpected behavior and really shouldn't elicit a big response. Dax, however, isn't just any streamer and seems to take serious offense to this, toggling over to read his chat. He switches overlays in order to do so, and that's when his hacks are brought to full focus. Our favorite moment hits when he realized almost immediately that his hacks were visible. He stops dead and gives a perfect deer caught in the headlights look before freaking out a little. Instead of being smart and shutting it all down stat, he scrolls down to his taskbar and clearly shows everyone exactly what program he's using before closing it down. Instead of ending his stream, he begins trying to distract his viewers by chatting with a buddy about movies. He reloads his dashboard and keeps trying to make small talk with his friend. His chat then goes off and viewers start actively bringing up his mistake while he tries to backtrack. He opens up his task manager to prove that there's nothing malicious up there and gets the fact that he was literally just seen closing the offending program. The kid finishes by dismissing the people on chat, saying they should just report him. He tried to play it off like no big deal, but you can see the terror in this kid's eyes from the very second the hacks were revealed. In case you were wondering if his followers took him up on his challenge, they absolutely did, and he was banned shortly afterward. What a spectacular way to go out, especially considering the kid himself is a bit of a wet towel. Number 1. Chaos 0807. Chaos once had over 30,000 followers and was a pretty big name in CSGO back in his day. That all came to an end when it was found that he had been hacking to boost his rank. Known as a bit of a gambler in tight situations, he was considered an exceptional player. Too bad his skills weren't based on any actual skill, with Chaos getting a VAC ban for using underhanded techniques, especially wall hacks. In a game like CSGO, knowing where other players are is a huge benefit, and unlike Miss Q, Chaos was able to expertly exploit this edge to the detriment of any responsible gaming. After receiving his ban, the gamer went public, whining about how he was unfairly targeted. What makes this ban even better was that he was caught and kicked live on his stream for everyone to see. This public shaming was what led to him trying to speak out against the ban in an attempt to clear his name and regain the community's respect. But after an investigation, his cheating was confirmed and the ban upheld. Needless to say, this caused him some serious issues, and he hasn't been taken seriously by any noteworthy gamers since. To be fair, that's exactly what he should have expected to happen, and we have absolutely no sympathy. We will concede that we can't confirm if he was using aimbots, but at this point, that really won't make much of a difference. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Many cultures have their very own form of the boogeyman, serving to terrify children all over the world and scare them into being good little boys and girls. These 5 boogeymen caught on camera and spotted in real life have captured the attention of countless kids, and while photo evidence is scarce, they still manage to generate a lot of hype. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Namahage. A being that features in traditional Japanese folklore. You don't want to run into one of these creatures, who are a form of Japanese boogeyman. They're a form of demon, with many stories calling them ogres as well. These demon ogres, first known as Oni, wreaked havoc on the countryside, stealing crops and young women, taking them back to their lairs. The stories have been adapted in recent times in an attempt to curb the bad behavior of children, with the Namahage supposedly kicking in doors to berate and admonish lazy or disobedient children. This teaches the children to obey their parents and behave properly when out and about. The Namahage are supposed to ask a variety of questions as they stalk villages, asking inhabitants things like, "Are naughty kids around?" or "Are there any crybabies around?" If they find some troublesome tykes, they then thoroughly bash them, with the child traditionally being carted off, never to be seen again. There are areas in Japan that pay homage to the Namahage in an annual festival involving men dressing up as these ogres, donning masks and brandishing fearsome-looking weapons. These men wander the village in pairs of 3, going about the task of knocking on doors and scaring the living daylights out of any kids they happen across. It goes without saying that being called out by a group of Namahage isn't a desired outcome, with many young children being very wary of the Namahage when they arrive on their doorstep. The festival takes place around New Year's Eve, but this is a fairly new practice, adopted in modern times and based on the Western calendar. The tradition used to see the festival fall on the first full moon of the new year. This usually occurs around mid-February. The old traditions have been done away with in many areas of Japan, but some villages still tell their children of the fearsome Namahage, reminding them to be good or face the consequences. Also worth mentioning is that gifts were generally given to the Namahage at each house they visit, as a tribute and thank you for keeping bad kids in line, while simultaneously not snatching the good ones. We can't say just how well this keeps kids in line, but we're sure that having an annual reminder would be enough to freak some of them out in no small way. Those guys must get a kick out of their festival duties, and we have to say, it does sound like a lot of fun. Number 4, the Cuco. An Hispanic form of the boogeyman, the Cuco can either be male or female, being known as Coco or Coca respectively. The problem with this distinction is that the monsters themselves look the same, whether they're male or female, with the sex of the monster not really being relevant to those being attacked. Either way, it's gonna end poorly. Originating in Portugal and then spreading to Spain and Latin America from there, the Cuco, much like the Namahage, is used as a tool to keep children from misbehaving. They don't look all that fearsome, with most representations being similar to that of a ghost. However, that doesn't mean they're overly affectionate, instead choosing to kidnap and eat children that it comes across. The Cuco can either eat the child whole or take it to a kind of purgatory type realm where there's no chance of escaping. The child then spends all of eternity locked away like this, which is pretty dark. We don't know if we'd rather be eaten or left for dead in some strange prison, but the good news is that the Cuco only snatched the bad kids, leaving the good ones to do whatever they like. We think it's hilarious that parents have been telling their children for generations that they'll literally be eaten alive if they're bad. It's a little over the top, but we assume that some of these kids must be pretty disobedient to suffer such a grisly fate. It really does pay to not be a jackass in Portugal. Many people see the Cuco as a form of the devil. It lurks on the roof of a house to sense misbehavior and can blend into the shadows while maintaining its eerie vigil. When it notices a bad kid, it's supposed to swoop in and do its thing. Many accounts have also suggested that the Cuco is a shapeshifter, taking many different forms, with all of them being quite grotesque. Each group has a different take on how the Cuco is supposed to manifest, but all of them are convinced that this beast eats kids with reckless abandon. In Brazil, for example, the male Cuco are supposed to disguise themselves as a female alligator, with the female version either being an alligator or dragon. The dragonesque appearance of the Coca dates back to the story's Portuguese roots, with a dragon named Coca featuring in many traditional folklore tales. Number 3. Baba Yaga. A Slavic boogeyman, the Baba Yaga manifests as an old woman. She's usually quite grotesque and terrifying in appearance, being one of a group of 3 sisters who are all supernatural witches. Her mode of transportation is a little awkward, as she supposedly flies around in a mortar, using a pestle as a weapon. This is supposed to relate to witches crushing up all sorts of strange ingredients for their potions, using a mortar and pestle to do so. On that note, she's also said to sometimes carry a mop or a broom, meaning that Baba Yaga has a lot in common with modern witches, with the latter most likely borrowing elements of the former. Even more peculiar is that Baba Yaga, while looking like a woman for the most part, is capable of taking on other forms and is supposed to live in a hut supported by chicken legs. She's also supposed to have a hideous nose, which we think is a little mean-spirited. Living in the forest, not many people run across Baba Yaga, although some people do go out of their way to seek her out. Depending on the situation or how she's feeling on that particular day, the Baba Yaga can be good or evil, with most accounts leaning toward the evil end of the spectrum. She seems to be capable of shape-shifting and can be seen as one of many different forms on top of her actual appearance. The list is pretty varied, including Baba Yaga appearing as a cloud or even winter in general, which says a lot about her relatively ambiguous nature. She first popped up in folklore in 1755, included in a book on Russian grammar and references with regard to her being a part of traditional Slavic folklore. Baba Yaga is also related to the witch in Hansel and Gretel, as her MO is eating her victims whole. One story talks about a man named Ivan who makes his way to 3 Baba Yagas looking for directions. The first 2 send him on his way, while the third tries to eat him, with the man only escaping because he was previously warned by the second Baba Yaga he encountered. This highlights the fact that they can be good or evil, but suggests that it's probably not worth taking the time to find out. We really don't think those odds are good enough to take the chance on our lives, with many Slavic children being convinced to steer clear as well. Number 2. The Kappa. The Kappa is a demonesque creature that features in Japanese folklore, with Japan standing out as being a rough place for kids to live. There seem to be so many monsters they have to worry about that we're surprised they managed to leave the house without breaking down in tears. Kappa are ravenous beasts and spend most of their time in rivers or lakes. They wait beneath the waves for unsuspecting victims to swim up to them before pulling them under and drowning them before absconding with their body. They've also been known to engage in rape and kidnapping, disposing of their victims by eating them, although that last one shouldn't come as much of a surprise. They also like to take on horses or cows, although that means leaving their watery home, making them more vulnerable. The Kappa are used to explain drownings throughout Japan, and their story is told to children to keep them from swimming too far away from the rest of the group. That being said, they aren't all evil, and some have been known to converse with people, being incredibly interested in human culture and civilization. We think that's an interesting twist, as is the fact that some parents will appease these spirits before submerging themselves by writing their name on a cucumber and tossing it into the water. This is supposed to help protect any swimmers, somehow. One last interesting aspect of the Kappa is that they're also skilled in medicine and are able to help people who have suffered serious injury. We suspect that they don't help out much, more often than not preferring to simply eat people instead of fixing them, but it does mean that not all Kappa are evil. They can, for example, be tricked into helping people because they're unable to break an oath once it's been made. Number 1. The Whip Father. This boogeyman features in a number of different traditions. He's supposed to follow Santa Claus around, but is not a very welcome addition to Santa's crew as far as we're concerned. The Whip Father used to be an innkeeper who ended up not doing so well at a certain point in his career, with very little money and no hope that he would be able to pull through. He ended up meeting with 3 wealthy children one day. He seems to have suffered a psychotic break around this point, hacking the kids to bits with his wife to help him carry out the grisly deed. It just so happens that Santa was passing by and witnessed the scene, quickly rushing in to revive the children and bring them back to life. He then decided that the Whip Father shouldn't be left to his own devices and insisted that he act as Santa's helper from then on as a form of penance. The Whip Father, it should be noted here, is the entity that's supposed to drop coal in naughty children's stockings, showing some signs of defiance against Santa himself. He's kept in chains at Santa's side, which we think is a little dark. Little did we know that every time Santa showed up, some child-murdering psychopath was just hanging out with him. If we had known about this when we were kids, we probably would have bricked up the entire chimney and happily went without presents. Just imagine what could happen if Santa got distracted for long enough to let the Whip Father have a go at another kid. We can guarantee that would make for a rough Christmas day, and no amount of presents would lighten the mood. That being said, it seems Santa has some cool powers that we didn't previously know about, namely the ability to bring children back from the dead. So while he could always undo the Whip Father's evil deeds, it's worth wondering whether or not he'd be able to wipe the memories of those poor traumatized kids who were done in by none other than Santa's own helper. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Animals have some unique abilities that are foreign to us humans, but many videos have been popping up that feature teleporting animals, with people losing their minds over the implications. We don't believe in teleporting animals per se, but have included a few of our favorites for you to enjoy today. Some are ridiculous, and others seem somewhat legitimate, but all 5 of these animal teleportations caught on camera and spotted in real life are sure to catch your attention and put a smile on your face. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Mystery Dog. This video's making the rounds all over the internet and has amazed viewers worldwide. Many people are hailing this footage as proof of a real-life teleportation, with others calling foul, as always. We think it's got some merit, but are also, as always, hesitant to make any final ruling just yet. It shows a video taken at a drag race as two cars fly down the track and rocket past the cameraman. The pooch shows up after the two racing cars pass by in a complete blur, seeming to materialize behind the two vehicles directly in the middle of the track. The dog then sprints to safety on the near side and is greeted by a group of people who are happy that it didn't get crushed. After reviewing the tape, which does look legitimate, it seems like the dog was always there but was just obscured by dust and smoke kicked up by the passing cars. We assumed that it was at the far side of the track and got scared when it heard all the commotion, opting to sprint toward what it assumed was safety, which is probably back towards its spectating owner. The dog really was lucky to get out unscathed, as it seems to dart across the road mere milliseconds after the car sped by. If it had begun its journey just a second earlier, things would have taken a seriously gruesome turn for the worst. Still, we're not gonna knock those who believe that this is a real-life teleportation, other than to say that those people would have been a lot less excited and probably would have been terrified if they had actually witnessed an animal teleporting into the middle of a drag race. We know that we wouldn't want to get anywhere close to something like that, no matter how cool it would be. That, coupled with the fact that this story only broke after the footage was uploaded and not immediately after the incident, just goes to show what people can glean from grainy camera footage that's also out of focus. The speeding cars probably helped to warp the picture a bit too, with the cameras struggling to keep up, with its given frame rate not being sufficiently able to capture objects moving that fast. This and the dust kicked up in their wake all added up to a regular event looking miraculous, with someone running with the idea and others hopping on the bandwagon without considering the physics behind pulling off such a feat in reality. Number 4. Pine Marten seemingly transported through time. After traveling 35 years through time, a creature thought to be gone forever has made a spectacular reappearance, surprising all sorts of people, with the majority of the world giving up hope for ever finding a live specimen in Yorkshire, where the pine marten used to be prolific but was hunted to the brink of extinction. One group undertook a costly project dedicated to finding evidence that the pine marten lived on. It's worth mentioning that these critters did manage to survive in small numbers in relatively remote locations of the UK, but are supposedly beginning to make a resurgence and repopulate the rest of the island once again. The result of a 4-year study, the footage was captured by remote cameras placed by the Yorkshire Pine Marten Project, which sums up their purpose quite nicely, who have been trying to locate the elusive creature for quite some time now. We would have given up after 4 years of fruitless searching, but their efforts were finally rewarded, giving us the first glimpse of a pine marten in the area since back in 1982. A skull was found in 1993, but this is the first live specimen to be seen since the last sighting in 82, making the discovery quite a big one. Despite their success, we do have to wonder about the mental state of the people running the show at the Yorkshire Pine Marten Project. The group is non-profit and has dedicated their lives to proving the continued existence of a fairly insignificant animal as far as the overall ecosystem is concerned. Call us crazy, but we'd be much happier seeing researchers and scientists dedicating themselves to more lofty pursuits than simply proving they were right in assuming that pine martens were still living in Yorkshire. It all seems a little silly, but fans of the pine marten disagree with us, with people all over the UK, and especially Yorkshire, overjoyed about the discovery. They do live in Yorkshire, however, so we have to give them credit for the fact that there's probably not much to do in any given day for the most part, meaning any distraction from the dreary English weather is a welcome one. It's also a good thing that they set up remote cameras, because the thought of a cameraman crouching in the woods in a pine marten blind for the better part of 4 years sounds more like torture than a field assignment to us. Number 3. Disappearing Cat Act. This footage was taken by a residential CCTV camera and was uploaded by someone who claims not to have doctored the footage at all. While we want to immediately call foul, we'll bite and assume that this footage is real for a moment here. The guy who uploaded the video has stated that the cat isn't his, but he has seen it around on a number of occasions. He had always assumed that it was a stray, although it looks like it's been groomed pretty well to be a stray. We assume that it's probably a neighbor's cat that prowls the neighborhood from time to time when it's let outside. That aside, he says that he was stunned to see the cat show up on his video feed, walk around his door for a few seconds, and then mysteriously vanish into thin air right before his eyes. He ran outside and said he could find no sign of the cat, who he said just phased out of existence. Based on what we understand about the laws of quantum physics, which isn't much to be fair, individual atoms are able to exhibit some spooky behavior, but an entire cat worth of atoms would probably make such experiments much more difficult to pull off, with modern technology and understanding of the world around us not being sufficient to be able to pull a trick like that off. What we are able to do, however, is work miracles with a little editing software, which is probably exactly what we're seeing here. It's not even difficult editing magic, which makes us wonder why so many people seem to be buying into it. Even amateur editors can pull off better effects than what we just saw, and we miss the days when people put real effort into their hoaxes. Call us old-fashioned, but we miss that time and think our teleporting dog was a much better optical illusion than this disappearing cat. That being said, if this cat really did teleport through time or space, we want in and can't wait to sign up. Number 2. Teleporting cat trick. We couldn't help ourselves and had to include this video on today's countdown. It shows a magic trick that involves a cat disappearing as it passes underneath a pair of wooden frames. The video doesn't show how the trick is performed, but starts with the camera hovering over the frames, showing us that everything is as it should be. It then pulls back a little bit and drops lower to get a good view of the entirety of the frames, as well as a few extra feet on either side of them and above them. Underneath the frame is a wooden deck with intricate knots and markings in the wooden planks. The cat then pops up on the left side of the frames, confidently striding up to them and walking underneath without missing a beat. This is where the actual trick kicks in, because the cat disappears once it passed the leftmost edge of the first wooden frame, eventually ending up completely obscured from view. As it disappears completely, its head and front legs emerge from the rightmost corner of the second wooden frame as it continues to strut its stuff and walk off camera. It might be difficult to see how this trick was pulled off, but a little common sense will tell you that it's not that hard. If you look closely around the top and bottom edges of the two frames, you can see that it's a bit off from its background. What our magician did was print out a picture of what the deck looked like from the top and front, pasting those images onto a box and making it look like the entire box was just two wooden frames. It's a pretty impressive trick when viewed from the proper angle, but would be easy to notice if you happen to be in the same room and were able to simply move around. The trick is all about maintaining the right angles, but unfortunately it doesn't involve any actual teleportation or magical cats that are able to make themselves invisible or teleport themselves through space. Number 1. Cat stops time and teleports. You may have seen this video that shows a cat that's able to freeze itself in time and teleport through space without affecting the object or space around itself. It's a pretty good video that's all about cats doing cat stuff. We're sure you've seen clips of cats trying to sneak up without being noticed, using all of their wild instincts to catch their owners unawares. This is one of the funniest things a cat can do, and is actually one of the few that doesn't seem malicious in any way, with most of their antics involving breakables off countertops or tearing up clothing with their claws. This video starts with someone filming their cat going about its day. It notices them and goes into prowl mode, suddenly intently interested on the camera. It starts by moving slowly until its prey suddenly disappears behind the wall, hiding itself from view. After a few seconds, the camera peeks back out at the cat, now in full stealth mode, who isn't taking any chances of getting caught. Every time the camera dips behind the wall and peeks out again, the cat's moved another few inches to a few feet, freezing stock every time it sees the camera. We couldn't help but be impressed at how well this cat acts like a statue, with barely any on its part. If not for a few very slight movements, we could even convince ourselves that the cat isn't really there and is only a series of stills to a video. We know that's not the case, which makes this video even better. While some cats can be absolute menaces, tearing apart everything that you love and hold dear, cats like this one restore our faith in the species and prove once again that some cats can be awesome without even trying. The ending of this video is even better, with the cat finally making its way right up to the camera and simply staring, not sure of what to do next. A quick jab of the camera towards the cat then sends it flying back to its original position in fear, seemingly to start the process all over again. Now that's what we call a solid waste of an afternoon and one hell of a good time. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Most people don't consider the things living in sewers, with many assuming that they're filled with rats and not much else. There are actually a wide range of strange beasts that make their way into our sewers, with a few of those being caught on camera for our entertainment. Some of these are disgusting, with others ending up just being amusing pranks. These 5 sewer monsters caught on camera and spotted in real life are definitely worth taking a look at. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Fatberg. Our first monster on today's countdown isn't quite what you're expecting. It is a serious monster, but it isn't alive, and it never was. It ended up being found in a sewer in East London after a blockage was reported. A team was sent down to investigate and found what appears to be a 250-meter-long hunk of congealed fat and other waste products taking up a huge portion of the pipe. The enormous piece is a mix of everything you put down your drain, along with a massive helping of fat to help stick it all together. If you think that's one of the most disgusting things you've ever heard of, we don't know how a team stepped foot in that sewer without being overcome, not to mention coming across this thing and managing not to drop dead on the spot from shock and the smell. This monster, while not all that traditional, is shocking, and we're happy to never think about anything this revolting again, although that image seems to be burned into our retinas forever. Just be thankful that you don't live in London. If you do, then we apologize and recommend you start paying attention to what goes down the drain at home. This mess shouldn't have ever gotten to be this bad, and it's basically a result of people tossing whatever waste they feel like into the sink or toilet and sending them down the main sewer line. The cleanup job was estimated to take 3 weeks, an enormous amount of time when all they're doing is unclogging a drain pipe. That drain pipe, however, sees a ton of waste every single day, and cleaning it out would mean redirecting anything heading in that direction. We assume that they've got it all worked out, but we don't envy whoever it is that got volunteered for that job. The entire mass weighs a whopping 130 tons. Which does help to explain why cleaning it out will take so long. That's a huge clog, and puts anything you've ever seen before to shame. So the next time your toilet gets clogged up and you want to freak out about it, just think about this one and realize your problems could be a lot worse. At least your toilet won't take 3 weeks to fix. If it does, then it's probably time to call a plumber and stop trying to fix it yourself. Number 4. Unidentified mass. One thing we didn't expect when we first heard about this sewer monster is that it would end up being real. This makes the disgusting video footage even more revolting, with the answer to what this thing is still being unknown. It was found in Raleigh, North Carolina, and has people quite legitimately freaking out. We'd expect this kind of creature to be in a Ghostbusters scene instead of hanging out in a US sewer pipe, but the environmental EMS coordinator for public utilities in the city has both confirmed the existence of the creature and also restated that she still isn't sure what the hell it is. When she first saw the video, she assumed it was a slime mold that was at a particular point in its life cycle. This can see these molds slightly throbbing, but not really to the extent that this video indicates. After a little time had passed, she then released a public statement saying that the mass was actually some form of worm, without elaborating further other than to assure the city residents that the pipe this critter was found in wasn't attached to the city's main line and would therefore not be a threat to public safety. The most likely answer to what this thing could be is that it's a large mass made up of many tiny organisms. They're known as bryozoans and could explain things. Many scientists have shouted down this idea though, saying instead that they do have to be worms. The debate is pretty fierce considering the docile professional demeanor of most scientists, with proponents of all theories unwilling to back down. While everyone tries to work out what this pulsing mass is, we say they should just tear the pipe out and burn the thing in thermite just to be safe. We really don't need any facehugger aliens laying anything inside of us, thank you very much. We also don't like the idea of chugging down a glass of water that worms have been wriggling around in, assuming there's a chance they could get into the water supply. That would make for a very serious hazard to public health and safety, and no amount of filtering would make us feel safe. The people of Raleigh don't seem to have been affected too much, which is nice, but having a state official put out a statement to reassure us, just in case, would very much have the opposite effect, given how many serious health violations have initially been met with that exact type of statement. Number 3. United Utilities Monster. This next video is a little less gross and much more lighthearted than alien worm infestations or fatbergs weighing more than we can comprehend. It's supposed to have been taken by a utilities company in the UK that goes by the name of United Utilities. United is a pretty big deal, and we weren't sure it was their footage until we found out that they did in fact release it themselves. The video was featured in an ad campaign that was geared towards warning people about the dangers of flushing objects down the toilet that don't actually belong there. It seems like the good people of London didn't get that memo, however, and probably should have got themselves caught up a little sooner. The video shows a creepy sewer line that continues quite a long way. After a little bit of walking around, the smaller brick-lined walls open up and reveal a larger pipe that ends in a T-junction. As the camera approaches the junction, a lightning-fast figure whizzes by in a flash, disappearing just as quickly as it appears. Many people thought this footage was real when they first saw it and lost their minds. United Utilities had a ton of fun fielding all sorts of calls from concerned citizens telling them they should do something about their monster problem. We should remember that this is the same group that saw people jump from buildings when War of the Worlds first aired as a radio broadcast, summing up their gullibility levels quite succinctly. The video, for any who are still on the fence, was a hoax and was only supposed to grab the audience's attention and not give them full-on cardiac arrest. We also assumed that the cameraman would react at least a little bit to seeing a strange monster, but they don't miss a beat, keeping their camera dead steady, which should have been everyone's first clue that the footage wasn't genuine. We think it's an impressive ad, and it definitely is one that you'll remember after watching it through. It did its job wonderfully as far as informing the public in an engaging way is concerned, apart from those fat burgers in London, those troublemakers, and we think it's better than most monster videos we've seen in a long time. Number 2. Floridian Troubles. Number 2 on today's countdown starts right in the thick of things, with a wildlife expert wrangling an enormous gator out of a sewer drain. Alligators are pretty vicious creatures in the wild, with this one being quite a specimen. The gator seems to have made its way in before getting stuck halfway and not being able to get back out. Residents noticed the animal and decided to call it in for everyone's safety, including the animal. The best part about this video is that this seems to be a fairly routine sight in Tampa. Living with gators seems to be par for the course, with this 9-foot monster probably not the largest one this guy's had to fish out tail first. It also turns out that some residents keep gators in their ponds at home in order to keep out other pests, such as feral pigs. Call us nuts, but we'd pick pigs over gators any day, and we don't think one pest should be replaced with another that's liable to kill you and eat you whole for dinner. We can't believe that people in the US still have to take on gators in this day and age during their day-to-day, but there you have it. Even more worrying is the trend involving people keeping alligators as pets, only to release them once they grow too big to care for. These gators are already used to people by this point, making them much more likely to go wandering around the suburbs when looking for a meal. The guy in this video does know what he's doing, with all sorts of gear being used to pry the gator free from this particular drain. It doesn't seem too fussed when it does finally pop out, looking more relieved to be free than anything. Then again, we don't really know what a pissed off gator looks like up close when compared to a docile one, so we guess we're not the best group to declare the coast clear. It does make a little snap at the guy pulling its tail, but he looks like he's not too worried, and we assume that he knows how to handle a gator, with this supposedly being so commonplace. Number 1. Dragon Surprise. The next time you're strolling through Bangkok, you might want to take a look down every once in a while to inspect the sewers, because they might be holding a little more than you expect. This video was captured by a tourist who noticed the beast and held off on his surprise long enough to get some good footage. He wasn't the first to notice the creature, being alerted to its presence by a large group that had already gathered. He called the creature a Komodo dragon in its title, although it's more likely to be a water monitor, which are fairly common. That's good news for anyone who happens to be close by, as Komodo dragons can be quite vicious and have a mean bite. This water monitor is still impressive, and it would be a really cool thing to see up close and personal, even if it happened to be wading through garbage and waste. This being a fairly common occurrence all over Asia, we're sure the locals weren't too bothered and are probably used to these sorts of things, although probably not every day. The lizard itself is also pretty laid back about the entire thing, not stopping its slow plod to wherever it happens to be heading. If you think this is nuts, just remember that Florida does have sewer gators, so we just consider these water monitors to be the Asian equivalent of those, although they do seem less inclined to scoop these creatures up and keep them away from people. Water monitors are less dangerous than gators, however, being no real threat to humans, even when challenged, which does change things a little bit. We all adore a good prison escape because, let's be honest, they don't happen all that often. Inmates will security holes. Officials are also to be watching their every move, making any attempt extremely difficult. These 5 prison escapes caught on camera and spotted in real life are amazing tales that certainly led to extreme embarrassment for any officials involved. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Prisoners film entire escape attempt. What better way to brag about your prison escape than taking video footage of the entire thing and posting it online for the world to see? That's exactly what 3 inmates did when they broke out of the maximum security wing of the Central Men's Jail in Santa Ana, California. They used a cell phone that had been smuggled into the prison to capture the spectacle on tape, filming every single step event. They even edited the video and included music to make the whole thing look more impressive, although we would have been plenty impressed just knowing they were able to make their escape. They were eventually caught and returned to prison, but not before they completely embarrassed prison staff in the best possible way. They escaped through an air vent in 2016, giving each other thumbs up all the way through. They also used their bed sheets to help them during their escape, which is like something out of a Hollywood movie. The guys were all smiles during their escape attempt because, let's be honest, who wouldn't be? Gaming the system really doesn't get much better than this. They even managed to cut through 4 layers of steel rebar and grating, making this quite a feat that must have taken quite a long time to finally pull off. We don't know just planned their escape, but we're glad they were brazen enough to film it, including their entire route out of the prison. After a week-long search, the trio were apprehended, with the cell phone footage being admitted as evidence in their resentencing. It even included video from news outlets covering their escape and voiceovers from Adam Nayeri, one of the escapees, who uses the medium to bash authorities and basically make them look ridiculous. The entire escape doesn't take very long to pull off, making it apparent that the facility really needs to beef up their security, especially when you consider the fact that these guys were being held in a maximum security wing and not some minimum security funhouse. After reaching the roof of the prison, they lowered themselves to the ground using their sheets. Nayeri also brags about how they had a rope, a toolbox, and new clothes waiting for them, which is pretty impressive. They celebrated with a pipe and a bottle of Jack, having a great week of freedom before being returned to prison once again. Number 4. Helicopters in Quebec. When hijacking a helicopter is involved in your escape attempt, you know you've graduated and hit the big time. One group of inmates being held at Saint Jerome Prison in Quebec managed to do just that, making headlines and shocking the world with their boldness. Footage shows the chopper descending on the prison and aside to inmates waiting patiently in the yard below. When the chopper wasn't able to remain stable during their climbing attempt, the pilot decided to land on the roof to help them out. The vehicle remained on the roof for a good 8 minutes while guards watched helplessly, capturing the incident on camera. They were unarmed at the time and really had no other recourse other than to take some pretty impressive close-ups as the men scaled the ropes to the roof before hopping in the chopper and flying to safety. The prison was slammed for its lax security protocols, and many security experts were convinced that they'd make sure that this kind of thing never happened again. That prison ended up avoiding further embarrassment, but others didn't take the incident all that seriously, with another prison facing the exact same issue, this time just outside of Quebec City, a mere 15 months later. This is absolutely hilarious and spurred Public Security Minister Martin Coitu to take steps to avoid further embarrassment. Many prison officials, however, say that these measures are only a band-aid and that future chopper-assisted escapes are definitely still a possibility, although we're sure that guards will be better prepared next time around. It should come as no surprise that the attempts were mounted by the Hells Angels motorcycle gang, and that the fugitives were eventually caught and returned to prison after brief manhunts. The first two escapees exchanged gunfire when they were eventually found in a remote cabin, while the following 3 escapees were found hiding out in a luxury apartment in Montreal. Canada's really got a lot of explaining to do, especially considering the fact that many officials claim that this kind of attempt is still feasible. It also speaks to the fact that Canadian prisoners have wild imaginations, because using a helicopter across multiple escape attempts is certainly badass. Most stick with using their bed sheets to rappel down buildings, but these guys upped the ante with antics that we'd expect from a James Bond villain. Number 3. Guyana's prison fires. A fire is as good a time as any to make your escape from prison, which is exactly what these inmates decided in Guyana. It turns out that the fires were actually started by inmates themselves, although we don't know for sure if it was an attempt to cause confusion before the attempt or if inmates simply took advantage of a perfect situation. When the fires got out of control, inmates seized weapons and began fighting guards, leading to an all-out riot on the ground of Guyana's largest prison. In the ensuing panic, an undisclosed number of prisoners made good their escape and fled, with authorities still in a panic trying to douse the flames and focusing their attention away from inmates. The prison had earlier been criticized for overcrowding, and it seems that evacuation attempts were somewhat half-hearted. One video shows inmates being ferried into a secure location in the backs of trucks without much to keep them from jumping out and making a break for it. The open beds only extended up to just over the heads of inmates in the back, allowing them to easily jump out and take off running, which is exactly what we would have done. At the end of the day, authorities can only send you right back to where you came from, making an escape attempt a pretty solid bet for anyone involved. With over 1,000 inmates being locked up in the facility, we can understand how things got so out of control so quickly. We certainly wouldn't want to be one of the guards in charge of so many criminals who obviously outnumbered them in no small way. Aerial shots of the prison show the entire facility on fire, and we can imagine that cleanup efforts took quite some time. We wouldn't want to be tasked with keeping the prisoners in their temporary cells during that time. This also wasn't the first time that inmates have set fires, with a fire that occurred a year prior taking the lives of 17 prisoners. We don't know the actual number of deaths in this case, but we do know that the guard who was shot didn't make it. One thing's for sure, prisons in Guyana aren't somewhere we would ever want to be. Overcrowding is one thing, but multiple fires leading to a fair amount of deaths and a number of successful escape attempts is where we draw the line. Number 2. Shawshanked in style. It seems that 2 inmates were fans of The Shawshank Redemption, as well as an older movie, Escape from Alcatraz, which was released in 1979. The pair managed to create a series of tunnels underneath the prison and escaped through them after completion. They supposedly used power tools to make their escape tunnels after cutting holes in the steel walls of their very own cells. They then made their way through the tunnel using pipes to climb their way along and out to freedom. The Clinton Correctional Facility admitted the escape, which served to toss out 150 years without incident, which is pretty impressive for any facility, given the fact that inmates are always going to try to escape. Given the amount of time they have on their hands, if there's a way to escape, you can be sure prisoners will undoubtedly find it and take advantage. We can't imagine how they managed to smuggle actual power tools into their cells, or how guards or other inmates didn't hear them chiseling away at steel walls, but we assume when there's a will, there's a way. The 2 were aged 34 and 48 respectively, with both serving life sentences for incredibly brutal murders back in the day. They made their way through a series of tunnels located underneath the facility, popping out of a manhole cover a full 200 yards away from the prison wall, which we have to admit is a lot less gross than crawling through sewer tunnels a la Shawshank Redemption. The Shawshank similarities end there, with the Escape from Alcatraz connection realized when they used mannequins to make guards think they were tucked in and safely asleep in their bunks during regular nightly check-ins. This gave them all night to realize their escape, and guards only noticed the 2 were missing when they didn't get up for 5:30 a.m. roll call. Guards entered their cells in an attempt to rouse them, realizing too late that they'd been duped. The prison itself was only 25 miles to the north, making it a perfect spot for the criminals to disappear into the night. Officials weren't sure how they managed to get their hands on tools, suggesting contractors might have left them out in the open and neglected to realize they'd been stolen. They even used a heating pipe that could very easily have been turned on, scalding the two with steam if they'd been unlucky at all during their attempt. Hilariously, they left a note for guards that read, "Have a nice day," complete with a cartoon to go along with it. Number 1. Easiest escape ever. With most attempted escapes taking place under the cover of darkness, except for the already crazy helicopter trick, this one stands out because prisoners managed to get away undetected in the middle of the day. They made use of a malfunctioning door to get away, which isn't all that impressive when all said and done. Then again, officials must be kicking themselves for letting such a serious security break go without being fixed for so long that inmates decided they may as well make the most of it. Video footage shows just how the pair pulled off their stunt. The emergency door they used to escape simply didn't lock properly, with officials stating that the escape was due to security malfunctions as well as human error. Faulty wiring was all it took for these cons to game the system, and you can't imagine that a prison would have such lax security as to let this happen. The pair seemed to have heard about the door from a fellow inmate and decided to wing it, immediately heading over and running out of the facility without even breaking a sweat. They then tore off into the woods and disappeared, eventually being caught and brought back only 2 days later. We're gonna be honest and say that the two really can't be blamed for taking advantage of the problem door, because we'd definitely do the same if our freedom were on the line. We can only hope that the issue's been corrected and that those who were to blame have been sufficiently reprimanded in the meantime. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Alien abductions aren't real, are they? There are many people who believe that the following abductions absolutely happened, saying that they have evidence to back up their claims. We remain skeptical, but we thought we'd present the following 5 alien abductions caught on camera and spotted in real life for you to see them for yourself. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Photos and Tall Tales. This video comes from the YouTube channel Secure Team 10, who are known for all sorts of possible abduction videos. They pretty much cover all things related to alien visitation and strange occurrences, making them a good spot to check out if we need to catch up on the most bizarre theories. We don't buy much of what they're selling, however, and see a lot of it as hoaxes being proliferated for the sake of their own personal interest. Here at Top 5's Finest, we like to approach these theories with a bit more of a skeptical approach, bringing you the latest and greatest for the sake of entertainment before all else. Still, we thought that this video was good enough to bring to your attention and let you decide for yourself what's going on here. Secure Team 10 claims that this event occurred in 2004 when a woman in New Orleans was abducted by beings from the stars. She was in an open area walking through a park without much other than grassland all around her. She said that this thing appeared out of nowhere, blinking into existence in front of her. She was frozen stiff, unable to move or do anything to stop what was going on. Despite being frozen with fear or some other force, she managed, as we all would, we're sure, to capture as many pictures as she could. We find it strange that she was unable to move but was still able to get these shots, but we'll go with it for now and assume that her story's legitimate and not just a story made up for a few moments of publicity. She took 6 shots throughout the span of a minute or so, approaching the ship slowly as time went on. We're also triggered by the fact that not only was she able to take pictures, but was able to walk towards the supposed craft. Frozen and unable to move seem to be used quite liberally in this context, but the photos are interesting at the very least. The woman stated that the pictures got more blurry and out of focus the closer she got to the ship, suggesting that it had some kind of electromagnetic interference of some kind emanating from it. The pictures look quite ordinary, although we do have to admit that if something like that actually appeared in front of us, we'd be pretty freaked out too. The woman woke up suddenly, with her last memory being of approaching the craft. She was somewhere else entirely, 10 miles from her starting point. She also said that only a minute had passed between when she took the photos and woke up, which would be pretty strange. We don't know what to think of these pictures or this story, and we're happy to leave this unsolved mystery to whatever authorities are in charge of getting witness testimony. Call us crazy, but spending any amount of time with someone with a story so fantastical and full of holes isn't our idea of a good time. Number 4. Security Cam Mystery. Security camera footage has this film crew all worked up trying to work out what the deal is. The TV show called The Paranormal Borderline is full of all sorts of anonymous tips and strange occurrences. They follow up on spooky goings-on, investigating, and generally making a big deal out of very little. Ghost hunting shows can be fun for a half hour, but they don't really show us anything more than poor special effects and stunts, falling short of the mark more often than not. We're sure that isn't the case with Paranormal Borderline, of course, but we felt like we should point out the similarities for you. They say that they received a strange letter in the mail that they just couldn't pass up on, sent by someone who claimed to have been abducted by aliens, along with a video that showed the entire thing happen. The crew didn't know who sent the letter, but took it very seriously, popping the VHS into their dated machines and having a look. At no point did they think the footage could be doctored at all, which is pretty poor performance for supposed researchers. It seems like they just decided that they had to assume it was real for the sake of ratings and ask no further questions. The footage shows a worker walking through a gate and walking into an area of dark shadow. There's a flash of light that obscures the screen momentarily before all of the monitors simultaneously switch off before resuming their regular functioning. The gate is still there hours later when another flash appears. The supposed victim is crouched over and vomits before getting back up and staggering back towards the shadows. The man, it seems, quit his job soon after this incident, moving away without saying a word about his ordeal to anyone. The team then shows the tape to a bunch of whacked out professionals who claim to be experts. They all seem to think that this is standard alien activity. We personally think that we just witnessed a disgruntled employee get wasted before quitting a job he didn't like. Either that, or he was just sick and taking some time to hide while he avoided work and tried to recover a little bit. Jumping straight to abduction seems a little far-fetched, especially because nobody did any real sleuthing at all. Nobody spoke to the supposed victim, and the tapes were only reviewed after he left the company, so for all we know, it's just a regular event blown out of proportion. If you think this could be an actual abduction, however, we'd like to hear your side of the story and see what you have to say. Feel free to start up a conversation in the comments below. Number 3. Bedtime Abduction. Another group called Cosmic Conspiracies picked up on yet another abduction video that they've taken to heart rather quickly. This one's a little harder to explain than simply suggesting a disgruntled employee snuck off for a nightcap while on the job, with the story seeming to have at least a little bit of merit to it. The woman had previously been abducted by aliens in the week or so prior to this video being taken. She was sure it was gonna happen again, making her a nervous wreck and disturbing her sleep. She had nightmares and was really starting to go out of her mind. To help put her mind at ease, her husband suggested that they set up a camera and focus it on their bed to capture any strange occurrences that happened while they slept. He figured that if he couldn't stop anything strange from happening, and when it comes to alien abductions, who really can, he could at least capture some solid video evidence to present to whoever it is that you present these things to. The idea of a camera helped to calm the woman down, and she eventually agreed to tape herself sleeping, which isn't creepy at all in its own right. A few nights later, however, the footage only served to freak her out more. She had a feeling like she'd been taken and subjected to more procedures aboard an alien spacecraft, so she looked over the footage and saw that at some point in the night, she had literally disappeared. The footage shows the woman's shape disappear only to reappear a few minutes later, like nothing had ever happened. The footage is pretty grainy, so it's hard to make out what's going on, but it really doesn't look like there are any tricks being played on viewers. That doesn't mean they aren't there, however, as video footage can always be manipulated to show viewers what they're supposed to see. It's a good clip to be sure, and really makes us question whether abduction is real or not. We're still shying away from outright declaring it a thing, but we'll see that it's definitely within the realm of possibility. Number 2. Cornfield Snatchers. This next video was uploaded by someone who says it was found on an old SD card that was lying on the ground. They said they quickly reported it to the police after they watched it because they're sure that it was an alien abduction. It looks pretty good, but is probably just the work of amateur filmmakers trying to make their very own Living Dead spin-off. The footage is dark, with everything being pretty hard to see, but is 9 minutes or so of the gang running around and generally being terrified. After searching through the house, they head outside to look around a little more. They end up in what looks like a cornfield, with each of them slowly being snatched until the lone cameraman is left behind. They're eventually taken too, leaving the camera behind as evidence. If this was an actual abduction, aliens definitely wouldn't care about that kind of stuff after all, being happy to jet away to whatever galaxy they wish with their victims. There are a ton of these videos popping up all over the place, and people are really buying into them. It seems to be one of the new big crazes that'll eventually fizzle out. The cornfield cliche is strong in this instance, with the addition actually making us happy at the end of the day. People putting these videos and hoaxes together are shying away from some of the alien traditions that we really enjoyed, with crop circles being one of them. Seeing at least a few elements of one of the greatest alien hoaxes of all time is wonderful. Furthermore, cornfields are just creepy at night, with these kids playing it up perfectly. We're gonna rule this a definite hoax, but we do like the planning and preparation that was put into it. Number 1. Mine Tunnel Spookiness. Our fifth and final list item comes from UFO seekers and features the Mojave Desert, a favorite spot for UFO hunters and alien enthusiasts from all over the states. Its hostile environment and terrain make it difficult to explore, leading to all sorts of theories about the mysteries it holds within its expansive bounds. The particular feature they focused in on is found in Red Rock Canyon State Park, more specifically at a place called Burrito Schmidt Tunnel, not far from the El Paso Mountains. UFO seekers heard about an actual abduction that took place when a man was camping in the area. He called the team and they decided to investigate themselves by camping in the same spot and seeing if they could detect anything out of sorts. They make their way through the spooky mining tunnels, which are pretty creepy all by themselves. They go through quite an ordeal when in the tunnels, making their way out after deciding that their search was done. They found no real conclusive evidence, but called the trek a step in the right direction, whatever that means. They placed a bunch of cameras all over the place and saw some strange lights in the sky that appeared, eventually dimming out of view. They presented this along with what they called light paranormal activity in the tunnels, which we think was just them letting sensory deprivation get to them, as evidence of definite alien activity. The lights aren't really all that out of the ordinary, with so many strange lights in the sky in modern times, and we expected better evidence, but that just goes to show you that capturing real evidence of alien abductions is probably much harder than it looks. That being the case, all these hoaxes aren't really helping to narrow down our search. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. The world is still fascinated with all things ancient Egypt, with mummies featuring right at the top of the list, right above the ancient curses that they carry to protect their human remains while their soul relaxes for eternity in the afterlife. These 5 mummies caught on camera and spotted in real life were too ridiculous to pass up on, and we thought we'd present a few of these gems to you today and see what you thought, although none have managed to convince us just yet. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Ancient Mystery. This footage is straight out of a horror movie, with one artifact seeming to be possessed by a powerful and ancient evil. At the very least, it seems to shift its position without anyone touching it throughout the course of a day, as this time-lapse footage at a museum has shown. The Egyptian statue on display at Manchester Museum only seems to move during the daytime, with no additional movement after the lights are turned out and everyone goes home, which is the opposite of what we expected to see when we heard about a moving artifact. The statue of Neb-Senu dates back to 1800 BC and is only 10 inches tall. We assumed that it was potentially a prop being used to prank the public, But we doubt the museum would use such a priceless piece for a bit of tomfoolery, as it would be much too important to them. The first person to notice this strange occurrence was the museum's own Egyptologist, Campbell Price. He thought nothing of the matter, repositioning the piece and going about the rest of his day. When he returned the following day, however, he saw that the statue was once again turned around and facing the wrong way. Being the only person with a key to the case, he realized then that something was amiss. He set up a time-lapse camera and trained it on the artifact to see what it found out. When he reviewed the footage, he saw that the mummy was actually moving itself with no external help. One renowned scientist has suggested that the movement is caused by a phenomenon known as differential friction, wherein the object and shelf that it rests on create tiny vibrations, thus leading to the statue seeming to turn around. That would work for any particular placement, but the statue has since been moved to multiple different spots and seems to turn itself around every single time. Price also raised the question that we had, which relates to the fact that the artifact is actually spinning in an almost perfect circle, which is puzzling. If differential friction were to blame, then we're not sure such a perfect turn would be achieved every time, meaning there could be something unknown to science coming into play. It should be mentioned here that these types of sculptures were used back in the day by ancient Egyptians to hold the mummy's spirit if its body was somehow destroyed. We assume that this artifact's mummy is no more. We're just happy that it's content to take in its surroundings instead of coming to life and trying to wipe out humanity. Can you imagine? Number 4. Torquay Museum Apparition. When psychic investigators decided to check out Torquay Museum to see if it had any spooky inhabitants from beyond the grave, they really let their imaginations run wild. We thought it was worth pointing out that an overwhelming number of these paranormal investigators hail from the UK, making us wonder why Brits are so intrigued by the idea of ghosts. Many of these investigations are pretty forced, with much of their evidence being nothing but the ramblings of a few crazy people, probably after they've sculled a pint or two. We don't know why these people had to dress all in white and paint their faces for this particular seance, or even why museum officials let them do their thing in the first place. We think this is all a bit of a publicity stunt and aren't too ready to buy into it. We're much more likely to run with the idea if it isn't being propagated by a bunch of people who are actively trying to find something strange wherever they go. We firmly believe that people see what they want to, with most ghost stories just being strange occurrences that people can't immediately explain or optical illusions. Still, this group says they found a figure while looking back through their pictures, and they've also promised us that the footage isn't doctored. The face was noticed on a Facebook picture, although it's unclear who first noticed the apparition's face. The figure, which does look pretty creepy when viewed up close, is a woman who's staring back at the camera with a knowing expression. They also said the figure showed up on film and not at the time because they were using a full spectrum camera, which is able to capture wavelengths that the human eye is unable to detect itself. The group who organized the event are a group of ghost hunters who go by the name of Silent Voices, and they have all sorts of similar footage to go along with this particular shot, meaning you can head on over and take a look yourself if your interest has been piqued, despite our skepticism. We're always open to imagining the impossible, but we do need evidence before we come right out and admit anything right off the bat. Number 3. More museum hijinks. When you're visiting the final resting place of a 3,000-year-old mummy who's been moved from their original burial spot and over to Leeds City Museum, you have to expect that something odd might occur. And if something strange does happen, you can be pretty sure that whatever it is probably isn't too happy about being disturbed in such a public way. We wouldn't want to spend eternity being gawked at by a bunch of school groups and tourists, so we're sure we'd be pretty pissed off and ready for revenge. The spook in this video, then, is definitely better at turning the other cheek than we are, instead spending its afterlife slowly drifting through the museum tomb that its body is currently being held in. That's a pretty sad picture, although we'd be terrified instead of sympathetic if we were in the same situation as a pair of tourists who supposedly witnessed such an event. The mummy being held in the makeshift tomb is that of Nesyamun, who was an ancient Egyptian priest who lived around 1000 BC. The couple who took this footage are, it should be said, amateur ghost hunters, so we'll refer you to our previous comment and suggest you take this sighting with a grain of salt or two. The pair have their EMF meters out when they suddenly go haywire, beeping almost non-stop. They then witness a dark shadow pass right before their eyes before it slowly disappears again. We assume that this was all just special effects for their TV show, as showing episodes that involve finding nothing don't make for great ratings. After a little editing magic, they finally presented us with something interesting, although we're sure we could do better than a few sound effects and a tall friend walking behind us. The two had already heard reports of the priest being seen, and so were specifically looking for a priestly shape, giving their audiences exactly what they were hoping for. Still, we're happy to finish up by giving them the benefit of the doubt and assuming they're just straight up gullible instead of trying to mislead us in the search of higher ratings and validation through celebritydom. The two swear that nobody was behind them and that no light was shining from that direction, to which we say, sure there wasn't, while politely asking for something a little more impressive. Number 2. Llama lives on. In Siberia lies the mummy of Lama Itigilov, who many say remains alive and dwelling somewhere within his old body. These claims have been made because the former Lama has been impeccably preserved, much like a mummy, while his followers say that they did nothing to help preserve him in such a fashion. They've called it a miracle then, and are sure that his preservation is due to his spirit remaining inside the body and experiencing pure nirvana. Some have claimed that the Lama never died, and is instead so focused on his prayer that he's only looked dead for 79 years, preferring to remain in his happy trance world. This belief was supposedly substantiated when CCTV footage, taken by a camera that overlooks the mummified Lama, showed a figure moving around the room. Some people have suggested that this is only a security guard carrying plastic bags, accusing the now Lama Ayushiv, of playing a practical joke. The Lama has denied any such action and remains adamant that Lama Itigilov has actually been caught on camera breaking his vigil. In one picture, Ayushiv says Itigilov can even be seen resting on a sofa, leading us to believe that nirvana must be exhausting. Who would have thought that a monk who's been dead for 79 years would need a break from whatever it is he now does with himself, deciding to curl up on a nearby couch? The figure is almost certainly a security guard, and those do look a lot like plastic bags that he's holding. This is probably one of those instances where a person wants something so badly that they're incapable of seeing the truth right in front of them, despite plenty of evidence to back it up. Then again, Ayushiv could very easily think the exact same thing about us, convinced that we're just not enlightened enough to see the world for what it is. That's all well and good because we're not about to budge, because the getup you see the figure in the video wearing is incredibly modern and looks nothing like the former Lama's current clothes in the least. Unless this mummy's learned how to dress itself, we're calling this one busted. Number 1. Chupacabra Mummy. We'll finish up today with a video that we simply had to add, mostly because the mummy seen in this footage looks exactly like a chupacabra that was supposedly caught on video in Portugal. It's really a sad state of affairs when hoaxers can't even use their own footage, simply recycling a chupacabra and superimposing a pyramid in the background. If you take a look at our recent list featuring 5 mysterious creatures you won't believe if they weren't recorded, you can clearly see the resemblance, right down to the slow, shambling gait that this creature exhibits. That being said, this chupacabra mummy does look more at home in Egypt, and we can only assume that it was seen by 2 separate people as it made its slow journey from Portugal all the way to Egypt. Given that the last iteration of this beast was a South American monster, we could even go so far as to say that it could have made its way across the Atlantic during its walkabout. While it's a bit of a cop-out, we did get a kick out of this footage being regurgitated and had to post it for you. Do you think it's a mummy at the end of a stroll through eternity, or are both of these videos simply ridiculous hoaxes? We'll let you decide for now because we're too busy laughing ourselves silly. We really expected more from our conspiracy theorists and think they need to step their game up before people catch on that they've got nothing. Then again, we'll always have a ton of fun poking holes in their stories, so we'll consider it a win either way. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Videos are uploaded every day that show signs of hauntings, with most being a little far-fetched to pay too much attention to. These aren't all that much better, but we thought you'd get a kick out of these 5 poltergeists caught on camera and spotted in real life. They all have a little something to back them up, but that evidence all seems to fall just a little short of the mark in our minds. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. British Poltergeist. This video, taken by what seems to be a nanny cam, is certainly spooky evidence of poltergeists. It features an ordinary home with what seems to be some extraordinary visitors. These particular poltergeists seem to be more mischievous than dangerous, which is always a good thing, but if you believe in these beings, then you know that they can get violent without cause from time to time. The house had numerous cameras in it that all helped to capture the strange goings-on within. The entire setup was put together by Michael McGee, who is a self-proclaimed paranormal expert investigating reports of ghost sightings all over the UK. He said that ghosts even follow him around and have done so since 2009, although he doesn't ever seem to elaborate on why they seem so interested in him in particular. On top of the auditory clues, which we'll get to later, the video also shows some strange glowing orbs moving around the house. Michael said he decided to get video evidence of his haunting after people said they didn't believe him when he recounted the story, setting out to prove them wrong. As well as in response to increased spooky activity, he arranged these cameras in different rooms, hoping to capture as much activity as he could. If you believe McGee, then his house is absolutely filled with poltergeists who want nothing more than to keep him up and constantly toss his belongings around with no regard for their human roommate. The UK seems to be a hotspot for paranormal activity all across the island, as 1 out of 5 British citizens now claim to have witnessed this kind of stuff firsthand. We're not so sure about this being an actual haunting, and we'll admit that Michael could have staged the entire thing just to boost his fan base. Many viewers have been left convinced that something eerie is going on, however, with a large amount now convinced that Michael might be telling the truth after all. Whatever you believe, it's an impressive video and definitely does build up some serious suspense at times, especially when objects start getting knocked around. The orbs are interesting as well, more so because we've never known poltergeists to manifest themselves that way in any lore we've read, but modern hauntings seem to be much more engaging than the ones of the past. The glowing flashes could be anything, with poor video quality even being a culprit. We think that Michael managed to convince his friends, but we'd like to see something a little more substantial than an infrared video and sounds of running feet in the background if we're to be properly convinced of a real-life haunting. Number 4. Sibling rivalries from beyond the grave. Being haunted by a dead brother would be bad enough. That same ghost following you around for 8 years, never giving you any real peace of mind. One woman has claimed that's the exact situation she's found herself in, and she says that nothing has been able to make it stop. She's even moved houses 5 different times in order to find a quiet spot, but each time she does, the haunting starts right back up again. The first instance happened to her not long after her brother died, with plenty of the haunting supposedly caught on tape. She says that everyday objects move without anyone touching them and levitate off the ground with no explanation. The most alarming incident, at least for us, was when a Ouija board flew across the room. At that point, we'd be discounting the idea that we were being haunted by a relative and start considering the fact that we were being haunted by something much more evil. She also said that the haunting picked up in frequency after she began taping events. She did so to prove the hauntings to her friends, which have also been backed up by her boyfriend, who she lives with. She became really scared when the ghost stepped up its game and is convinced that she angered it in some way. She has even claimed to wake up with painful bruises, even after not getting bumped around the day before. Commenters on some of the videos she's uploading have mixed feelings, with some doubting her claims. A team of paranormal experts have backed up her claims, saying the footage is real, and they've stated that they believe she is in fact living with a poltergeist. While that's all well and good, we are quite happy to remain skeptical about this haunting, although we will admit that something strange could be going on that science can't explain. That being said, there are a lot of people out there who make these sorts of claims every day, with most being a hoax. If you think that Miss Ayres, the woman supposedly being haunted, is really being troubled by a strange creature, feel free to leave a comment below and get the discussion going. Hopefully someone's able to make us come around by producing some evidence that we can really get behind. Until then, we'll be patiently waiting. Number 3. Moscow Bar Haunting. A bar in Moscow seems to be haunted by a malevolent spirit, at least according to staff and CCTV footage that shows chairs being upturned and curtains being shifted, among others. This all happened after staff alerted a group of paranormal investigators, who then moved in and attempted to substantiate the claims. This show seems to be a lot like ghost hunting TV shows everywhere. It's got very little substance and a ton of stuff going on behind the scenes to make it look like things are more than they seem. Still, they've got eyewitness accounts of previous hauntings related to them by staff who've worked there for a while now, with one waiter claiming that he hears all sorts of sounds with strange knocking noises occurring when he's there on his own. Someone obviously forgot to tell these people that restaurants can be creepy places at night, with a lot of things that make a ton of noise. Appliances kick on and off, with most cases like this being treated reasonably. We're sure this restaurant isn't haunted, with the strange sounds being regular restaurant sounds. As with all these videos, they do see objects being hurtled around the room, but we've seen enough charlatans to know that those kinds of special effects aren't all that hard to pull off. The paranormal investigative team also captured footage of a hookah falling off a table, which rounds things out nicely. We think that the bar owners wanted a little publicity, but they could also be seriously paranoid. The team that they called in is known in Russia as Laboratoria Nepozanago, which basically translates to the Lab of the Unknown. The group uses a series of tests and said they found strong magnetic readings inside the bar and that EMF meters responded violently. They even called the waiter out personally, saying that his low spirit, whatever that means, could be attracting the poltergeist. We think that's a little rough, especially if the owners of the bar were actually worried enough about ghosts to call in a squad. If they took the investigation seriously, which it certainly seems like, then that guy's probably out of a job. Think about it. If you believed an angry spirit was haunting your establishment, and then you found out an employee was actually attracting said spirit, you'd can them pretty quickly too. We know it sounds a little ridiculous, and that's because it is, but we still think that there could be a sliver of truth to this, despite our constant badgering otherwise. Number 2. Hooded Monk Haunts House. This video is another one that's based in the UK, which at this point shouldn't be much of a surprise. The Brits go nuts for a good ghost story, and this ghost hunter says he's captured footage of an infamous ghost who tried to possess him during one of his investigations. Kyle Fowler, ghost hunter extraordinaire, seems to have been attacked by the Black Monk, which is a well-known poltergeist. This event supposedly occurred in a relatively famous haunted house. That being said, haunted houses seem to be a dime a dozen all across the British Isles, with all of them supposedly being famous for one reason or another. That aside, the Black Monk of Pontefract is known for haunting the house located at 30 East Drive in Pontefract, West York. The monk became a household name when he supposedly tortured the Pritchard family at that location for years, haunting them viciously. The idea that the family stayed put throughout all this torture makes us call bullcrap. Unless, of course, they had some pretty sick fetishes to keep up with. Whatever their reason for staying, they did, and their story became one of legend. We think they're a bunch of nuts, but that's just our opinion. It seems like the almost possession happened when the team, after an exhausting day of ghost hunting, decided to rest up by practicing some mirror scrying. This involves staring into a mirror and inviting the ghost to show up, much like the Bloody Mary call-out. Kyle said he fell into a deep trance while doing so and saw some seriously disturbing stuff in the mirror, like his eyes going black and his face changing to that of an old man's. Another member of his team snapped him out of it after a few minutes of calling his name. She seemed pretty chilled out, considering he was possibly being possessed, but took it in stride, with everything ending up just fine. The team also said they saw some other strange poltergeisty stuff, but a possession's always worth focusing on. The rest is all more of the same. Strange figures walking upstairs, objects falling, and a lot of tense moments while waiting for someone to speak. Number 1. A family haunting. When a poltergeist is running around on a kick, moving cupboard doors and shifting chairs around, you've definitely got a problem. One family has video evidence of these kinds of goings-on, with chairs moving back and forth and doors swinging on their hinges. Their haunting has been going on for around 6 months, according to Lisa Manning, with her kids even seeing some strange things and later reporting them to their parents. Lisa knew exactly what was going on when her kids brought it up because she was already aware of it herself, saying that she decided to set up hidden cameras to show the world that poltergeists really do exist. Despite the fact that she claimed to set up multiple cameras, we only have footage from one, which is actually quite tame compared to some of the other videos we've seen today. Still, you never know when it comes to the paranormal. Many people are calling foul once again, and we have to follow suit, wishing Lisa the best and hoping she's able to put something more convincing together. We expect this was a joke between herself and her kids, with things accidentally spiraling out of control. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button before you head out if you're new. That's all you have to do. Come on, just click it. I know you want to. Oh, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. I heard it gives you superpowers in the future or something. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. NASA's been putting up with a lot of criticism from all over the place, with some claiming that they've already found alien life on Mars, and others saying that they need to produce more evidence if they're to be taken seriously. Whatever side of the argument you're on, these 5 alien species caught by NASA on Mars are our way of addressing the issue and helping to keep the debate rational. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Anonymous. Anonymous recently claimed that NASA was incredibly close to finding alien life on other planets, sparking quite a lot of controversy. The notorious hacker activist group didn't have much to back up their theory, however. They quite simply stated the obvious, which is that we're now able to chart distant galaxies with more precision than ever before, and it's only a matter of time before we eventually bump into an alien species. That's not the hard evidence that all the fanfare seem to suggest, but it does make sense. We just think that whoever's in charge of Anonymous needs to step their game up in a big way. Sure, NASA's on the verge of being able to make contact and communicate with alien species, so to speak. This doesn't really sum up the entire issue behind the if and when of such discoveries being made, if they're ever made at all in our lifetime. The odds are stacked against us, at least in the next little while, with Anonymous's claims being a little misguided and their announcement just a little too early to make any real headlines. People are still buying into all of their nonsense, however, and we thought we'd take some time to set the record straight. We get what they're trying to do, but trying to make themselves a part of something much larger than themselves comes across as petty. Anonymous is really grasping at straws these days, and we can't believe that they've sunk so low. They were never to be taken seriously to begin with, and this just proves as much. The great hacker collective picking on NASA is just a ploy to increase the belief in bogus conspiracy theories around the world, and we're not buying it. Furthermore, we can't really get behind it, especially when they're going out of their way to spread disbelief. NASA is making real strides when it comes to space research, and we can really expect good things to come soon. We also think that they'd tell us the second they did. NASA's really given us no reason not to trust them, and we can't wait until they finally do find life on other planets. Hopefully this happens in our lifetimes, but we're not holding our breath just yet. A planet having life on it doesn't necessarily mean that said life will be intelligent. The red planet may not have Martians running around on its surface, but there's still a chance, however small, that microbial life is still clinging to some rock in some cave somewhere on Mars, and that's pretty cool to consider. Number 4. Skull. Speaking of theories, one image is circulating around the internet with plenty of people hopping on board and saying that it could be proof of alien life on Mars. Not just that, they say that the scene portrays evidence of an ancient battle complete with shields and warriors. At least, that's what they'd think of when they see a blurry image of what NASA says are just rocks and nothing more than that. We assume it's kinda like looking at clouds, hoping to see something familiar in them. When it's just clouds, you can be sure what you're seeing isn't real, but it seems that plenty of people have managed to convince themselves that random rock formations and features must be signs of something strange. You really have to be trying extra hard to see some of the structures and buildings that some people see, but we have to admit that this formation does look pretty cool. Despite the fact that it's blurry and out of focus, zoomed in and altered beyond recognition, this photo does kinda look like a skull. We're not so sure about the shield that people see, but that being said, we don't think that this is evidence of any aliens that were caught on NASA's cameras. It's fun to imagine these things and even look for evidence yourself, but posting outlandish claims of irrefutable proof all over the place and sucking people into the hype unnecessarily is just ridiculous. When all's said and done, NASA did find something interesting, but that something is probably nothing more than a rock formation. What is interesting to think about is that the microbial life that we mentioned in our first point could be lying not too far below that skull. There are so many more realistic theories that could help point us in the right direction and add to the conversation in a meaningful way, other than just posting blurry photos. We get that proof of that caliber is tough to come by, but we should then wait it out and leave the big statements to the people who know better. Don't get us wrong, we're still gonna report on all the news of strange events and creepy sightings, but we're also quite happy accepting the facts as they are. Speculation is one thing, but presenting it as fact just isn't our style. If you do think there's some merit to this story, don't be shy. Let us know what you think in the comments below. We're always happy to promote engaging discussions that help us all work our heads around these tough concepts. Number 3. Rover Discovery. And so we move into our next item, which one uploader has claimed is proof that there are actual structures on Mars. Not only that, but they also seem to be claiming that these structures look very much like those found on Earth, with one shown in the image resembling a barn. Taken by the Curiosity rover, the image was scrutinized by experts and amateurs alike, with more than a few of the latter claiming